Amen. Sergeant at arms, I can see the clerk has established that you have no quorum. Ring the bell for quorum bell for 5 minutes.
The Deputy Speaker of the Senate has directed the Sergeant at Arms to ring the quorum bell for 5 minutes, and this is pursuant to the directives as well as powers given to him by the House standing orders that guides the House on matters quorum of the House. As it stands, the Senate doesn't have the requisite number to commence business this afternoon, and so that particular bell you're hearing on your end is to allow more senators to access the chamber this afternoon, to allow senators consider the agenda before the House this afternoon. The Employment Amendment Bill, Bill number 11 of the year 2022, is a bill currently at the second stage. The Agricultural and Livestock Extension Services Bill, bill by nominated Senator Maureen Tabitha Mutinda, bill number 12 of the year 2022, is another bill currently at the second stage, and so is the Tea Amendment Bill, bill number 1 of the year 2023 by Senator Wakili Hilary Sigei. The Senate will also be considering the Konza Technopolis Bill, bill number 2 of the year 2023. These particular bills are currently at the second stage, where senators will be debating proposals in the amendments bills. The compensation of Kenyan victims in the 1998 bombing of the United States Embassy in Nairobi County is a motion by Senator for Machakos County, Senator Agnes Kavindu Mudhama. And in this particular motion, the Senator for Machakos County seeks to have the Senate resolve that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs advances friendship and cooperation between the United States and Kenya by supporting the eligibility of Kenyan as well as American victims and their personal representatives, surviving spouses, as well as next of kin in the victims' compensation funds. And this is pursuant to the Justice of the United States Victim of State-Sponsored Terrorism Act, as well as partners with the Ministry of Health to explore subsidized medical treatment for the surviving victims of the bomb blast. This will be resumption of this particular debate that was interrupted on Thursday, 16th of March. The year is 2023, and this particular motion has a balance of 2 hours.
The clerk.
Order number 1, administration of oath.
Next order.
Order number 2, communication from the chair. Is there any communication?
Next order.
Order number 3, messages.
Next order.
Order number 4, petitions. Have that. Okay.
There's a petition by Senator Samson Chelagey. That petition is defunct. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, Wednesday, the 29th of March, 2023. Number 1, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Kajiado County Executive for the year ended 30th June 2022. 2, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the Kajiado County Assembly for the year ended 30th June 2022. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Kajiado County Assembly, Car Loan and Mortgage Fund for the year ended 30th June 2022. 4, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Kajiado County Emergency Fund for the year ended 30th June 2022. Number 5, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the Bomet County Loan and Mortgage Scheme for the year ended 30th June 2022. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay.
Okay, thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Next.
Order number 7, statements.
We have several statements. We start with one for understanding order 53-1 by the Senator for West Pokot County, Senator Julius Murgo. The next one is the statement stands defunct. Next is Senator Nandi County, Senator Samson Chelagey is also absent. Defunct. Statement defunct. The other one is Senator for Kisumu County, Senator Professor Tom Ojenda. Still defunct. The next is from nominated Senator Christo Asige. A statement stands defunct. The next one by nominated Senator Beatrice Ogola. Are you Beatrice Ogola, Senator? Okay, proceed and lean on behalf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to seek for this statement on behalf of nominated Senator Beatrice Ogola for County of Kisumu on the status of Ruma and Kodera Forest in Homa Bay County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53A to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources regarding the status of Ruma and Kodera Forests in Homa Bay County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, apprise the Senate on the circumstances that led to the massive cut down of trees in the forests and state who approved the deforestation, and 2, state when reforestation is to commence in the 2 forests. That is the end of the statement, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. My screen, somebody to work on this screen. Do you have any member interested to make a comment? Yes, Senator Manzo Daniel.
Do it for the next one, Mr. Speaker. No, not this particular one.
The next statement is by Senator for Vihiga County, Senator Ngonfure Ososi.
Speaker, I wish to request for a statement on the status of the gazettement of Kibiri Forest and settlement at Shiru Shaviringa Settlement Scheme. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Lands, Environment and Natural Resources regarding the status of the gazettement of Kibiri Forest and settlement at Shiru Shaviringa Settlement Scheme. In the statement, the committee should, 1, cause an inquiry into the status of the government written assurance to Parliament via a letter dated 1st December 2021, which made an official commitment to resolve the long-standing issues of settlement of people residing in Shiru Shaviringa Settlement Scheme. 2, give reasons for the inordinate delay by the county government of Vihiga to petition Parliament on alteration of boundaries of Kakamega Forest to exclude Shiru and Shaviringa settlement schemes in light of the land exchange program which was initiated by the government in 1985 during the creation of the present-day Vihiga County headquarters and Mbale. 3, apprise the Senate on the status of the boundary survey by the Kenya Forest Service and the relevant ministries, stating the amount of public funds budgeted for the survey exercise, giving the status of NEMA's environmental impact assessment, which was to be done concurrently with the survey exercise. 4, give the status of the ongoing exercise to fence Kakamega Forest, stating the forest cut line indicating whether the aforementioned scheme is within the cut line. 5, give reasons for the delay in the implementation of the presidential directive via the letter reference number OP/CAB/26/1/3A dated 1st April 2014, which directed the gazettement to be fast-tracked. 6, give reasons why the specific recommendation on this matter contained in the report of the inquiry into the illegal and irregular allocation of land, the famous Ndungu report, have not been implemented. And finally, Mr. Speaker, cause an inquiry into allegations that certain individuals, certain powerful individuals who benefited from the excision of the same section of the forest have been undermining efforts to finalize the issuance of titles to the bona fide beneficiaries. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Senator Ososi, you approached me to make a comment on your statement, and I can see standing under 53, is allowing me to give you 53-4, to give you some minutes at the discretion of the Speaker, to give you some minutes to make your comment, or any other senator interested to make the comment. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious matter, and this is a situation where in the late 80s, when Vihiga district had been created, the government resettled people in the forest, the Kibiri forest, on an understanding that their lands were going to be taken over by government, and they were going to be compensated by being settled in the Kibiri forest. Mr. Speaker, several years later, these people don't have titles, and that place has not been degazetted as a settlement scheme. Mr. Speaker, I raised this matter in the National Assembly, in the 12th Parliament, and some progress was made. The government made a commitment to start the process of settling these people. Mr. Speaker, this process has stalled, and just about a month ago, these people invaded the office of the governor, where we also have the county referral hospital, and demanded that they were going to take back their lands. Because though the government took their lands, these people have not surrendered their titles. And therefore, government installations is hosted on private land. And Mr. Speaker, this matter has been on for years. A lot of intervention has been made by leaders in this area, but nothing is being done. And yet, at the moment, as we are speaking now, and I wish Honorable Khalware was here, the government is in the process of fencing Kakamega forest. So basically, to fence the forest, these people inside the forest. Mr. Speaker, in the Ndungu report, and even in the TJRC report, it was indicated very clearly that these people surrendered their lands, and the government had no reason to deny them land in the settlement scheme where the government took them. So, Mr. Speaker, I would direct that using your powers under Standing Order number 1, you direct that the committee responsible takes this matter seriously and gives it a priority, because now we are going to have a conflict. The conflict between these people who genuinely gave out their land and the government which has not surrendered their land to them. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish that this Senate helps me as a senator of Vihiga County to resolve this problem once and for all.
Thank you, Senator Sosi. Senator Manzo Daniel Kitonga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very serious matter. It's also a very emotive matter. As Honorable Sosi has stated, it was already before the National Assembly, you know, in the 12th Parliament, and it has escalated over a long time. This particular case creates an exception, Mr. Speaker, because ordinarily now, Kenya and the whole world is protecting forests. And the distinction in this case is that the people around that area gave away their land and they did not get anything back. And now that the place is being fenced and there are being fenced inside, and that the place should have been gazetted for settlement, removed from the forest and allowed. Although now the practice is that really no forest should undergo through that procedure, because we need to conserve all the forests in the country, Mr. Speaker. We need to plant more trees. It's a call of the whole world, and is a matter which is very, very serious. So I really want to support Mr. Ososi, Honorable Ososi, Senator, and also say that forests really needs to be protected, even what remains after excision. And even these people who are being given this land, Mr. Speaker, they should also plant trees so that we leave the theme. And for the government to have reversed its decision, it's got to be fair to these people. What is impending, Mr. Speaker, is that these people are going to be removed from this land and is going to become afforested again. So I'm really pleading with the committee to move with speed so that, because it has been a long time promise of the government, that it can be fulfilled. Mr. Speaker, this has also happened into the other forests, and I believe where government had given a direction, after following all the procedures, then the direction should not be reversed by subsequent governments, because governments enjoy perpetual succession. But bearing in mind, Mr. Speaker, we must really conserve forests. We must avoid the so-called farming in forests, invading of forests, burning down of forests. Mr. Speaker, in makwiny, quite a number of people try to burn charcoal or burn the forest, and it has been very, very difficult for us. And not only in makwiny, I've seen it in many parts of the country, including the latest forest, which was burned recently on Monday in Kiambu, and it is a very sad situation. We should all conserve trees for the future of the nation and for the future of all of us. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Thank you. Senator William Kipkemoi-Kisang.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also rise to support Honorable Sotsi, the statement by Honorable Sotsi. Honorable Speaker, in the 11th Parliament, I had a similar issue in Elgeyo-Marakwet County, Marakwet West, where 1994, when Marakwet District was carved out of Elgeyo-Marakwet County, there is a community that gave out its land, and it's similar to what has happened in Vihiga. And for those number of years, over 20, 25 years, the people of Vihiga who gave out the pieces of land sought to create space for the district headquarters are still staying in the forest without title deed, Honorable Speaker. You know, Honorable Speaker, there are 7 areas, because I followed between 2013 2017, about 7 areas in the country that have a similar problem, and the issue is live at the cabinet. The cabinet have not sat to approve for the assessment. I know the issue is what Honorable Manso could be saying. The 2005 Forest Act, you know, like it's very difficult to do the assessment, but people have already given out their land. They have title deeds. They have not surrendered to the government. They are living in a land without title deeds. You know, it's a very difficult situation. So the committee needs to move with speed, and we resolve this thing once and for all, because some people fear that this might open up a Pandora box for others to decassette other forests. But this is something that was documented way early 90s, and some as late as late 80s, because in Elgeyo-Marakwet County, Honorable Speaker, we have Kapsor district headquarters for Marakwet West that people gave out land and they moved to an area called Chevara, and up to now they don't have anything similar to what has happened in Vihiga. So I believe the committee needs to look at this thing holistically so that we come up with a solution to help our people once and for all, instead of people suffering and they had land that they gave willingly after negotiating with the government of that time. And you know, government is in perpetuity. The government of Moi then and the current government and even the past one is the same. So they need, these are our people. We need to help our people to acquire relevant documents, and they should not be pushed out by KFS. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support.
Thank you. Senator Onyonka Richard Momoima.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to support my brother Osotsi for raising such a critical issue. Mr. Speaker, as you know that me and you and a few members who are in this house have been in this parliament for many years, and we are constantly discussing the issue of our land, the land question in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I think it has come to the right time now. I think the Senate, I believe that if you look around on what is happening to our politics and the issues which are coming out and they're outstanding, Mr. Speaker, I think it's necessary now for us to look at the Ndungu report. It's okay for us to look at the Kiliku report. It's important for us to look at all the reports that have discussed and raised critical issues about the land question in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, leaving that alone, and I have to make my declaration here that I seem to have a matter which is affecting me personally, but is being handled by a governor in one of the counties in our republic. And what is happening now, Mr. Speaker, is that when a governor comes after the governor who was there before has left, that governor who comes in then changes the rules and sets up ad hoc committees, does not regard the law, and runs around all over the place trying to tell his people he's trying to reclaim land that was stolen by the grabbers. And yet in reality, Mr. Speaker, some of the residents on this land are actually very poor squatters who have lived on that land for more than 25 years. Some of this land was actually annexed and allocated fairly. Some of it has been actually grabbed, as the public is aware. And yet, I believe that our government hasn't been very clear on land policy, on land demarcation, on which land we must keep strictly for agricultural purposes and what needs to be kept strictly for development in terms of building infrastructure or building houses or building railways and all that. I think, Mr. Speaker, instead of us looking at this matter in a piecemeal manner, in other words, instead of us looking at the issue that Honorable Sosi has talked about, there could be one issue that I could bring from Kisii County, where I come from. You find Honorable Mutata is going to talk about land that has been grabbed from the airport of Busia. I really think that, and I'm happy that the majority leader is here. Mr. Majority Leader, I would like to make a very special request. If you can discuss with the President and ask him, we actually need a very special commission that would go through the Republic of Kenya and come up with the resolutions which are implementable, which will remove the amount of anger and the amount of conflict that exists in our country because of the land question. I believe that it is necessary for us to seriously look at this issue so that we can try and limit or reduce the amount of anger, desperation, and frustration that many of our voters have, and make sure that we have a reasonable land policy so that if somebody wants to come to Kenya and be a squatter, Mr. Speaker, then this person can actually buy land without having any question about it. Mr. Speaker, finally, if you go to a country like Rwanda today, if you wanted to buy a piece of land, you can actually do it from Nairobi. You do it online. You check on the piece of land, they give you the land, they have a portal, you access, the pictures come on your phone, you go to the Attorney General's office, and it tells you whether you can buy that land or you cannot. Mr. Speaker, I don't understand why in Kenya we can't do that. And you know who set up the system in Rwanda? It is Kenyan surveyors and Kenyan engineers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I want now to recognize the school visiting this Senate. Let alone I'll give two more senators to make comment on the same statement. I can see there is a lot of interest on this statement, touching on land issues. Honorable Senators, you have visiting teachers and students from the Renana School in Nairobi County. In the public gallery, we have 86 Form 4 students accompanied by 3 teachers from the Renana School in Nairobi County who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. Senator Mugeni Eric Okongo.
First, Mr. Speaker, allow me on behalf of the Senator for Nairobi, Senator Sifuna, to welcome students from Lenana School to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, in our days when we used to attend O levels and aspire to go to A levels, Lenana High School is one of the a school that used to attract a lot of interest from students. And only the ones who are top used to make it to Lenana. So I'm proud to today welcome students from Lenana High School, and I'm happy that they have shown keen interest to visit the Senate so that they can understand the operations of Parliament. Lenana School is a very promising school, and I have no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that perhaps in the midst of these students, in the years ahead, may arise a senator for Nairobi. So welcome to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, this issue that has been raised...
Senator Kongo Mgen, maybe let me get to know whether there are maybe other senators interested to welcome the students, and then I'll give you the opportunity to make your comments on the statement. Senators, with Senator Mwaruma.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of delegation of Nairobi, Senator Sifuna and Senator Tabitha Mutinda, allow me to join you in welcoming the students of Lenana School to the Senate, and Karen Nyamutu, the delegation for Nairobi, to welcome you to the Senate of Kenya. As you may be knowing, in Kenya we have a bicameral parliament where we have the Senate, where we are, and the other house is the National Assembly. And what we do basically is we protect devolution. And I would like to encourage you to work hard so that you find your way one time to the Senate of Kenya. Here we make laws, laws that govern our country, because for you to run a country you require laws and policies. Feel welcomed, Lenana School. I know most people would want to come to Lenana School because it's one of the top schools. I had a standard 8 class student who wanted to really come to Lenana School, but he ended up in Maseno School this year from 1. So feel welcome and learn as much as you can. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. There is also Senator Siengo Karunda Beth. The Lenana School is a school that everybody would like to be associated with. So I'll give us maybe 2 more senators.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Let me add my voice on welcoming Lenana School to this house. On behalf of the women, I know in the these boys have mothers at home. I extend a warm welcome to the students and encourage them to set goals that they want to achieve in life, and more so, to be very ambitious. In this house, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are people who have excelled in different fields in life, and these students can also do so. They can excel and they can do very well. And there is a saying that goes that the young people are the leaders of tomorrow. They can start now and remain leaders throughout their lives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I welcome them to the Senate.
Honorable Senators, I was to challenge you this afternoon whether Nombonde went to Lenana High School, but luckily I've got one senator for Homa Bay County, old boy of Lenana High School.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I join you and the House to welcome the second batch of students from Lenana School, also called Changes. These young men, once they complete school, they will be called Libons, because they will have been processed through one of the finest institutions of learning in this republic. Mr. Speaker, this House has never had a shortage of Libons. As I mentioned yesterday when I welcomed the batch that was here yesterday, the former Deputy Speaker of this House and the current Cabinet Secretary for Interior, Professor Kindiki, is a Libon, is an old boy of Lenana School. The current Governor of Nairobi, who has also been the Senator of Nairobi in this House, is a Changerian or a Libon. Mr. Speaker, yours truly is a Libon who was in James House in Block 5. And Mr. Speaker, Block 5 used to be a bit close to Riruta. So our hobby in the evenings was to go and grab some mutura from Riruta. But I am not encouraging the boys to do so, because if they do those kind of activities, they will end up becoming politicians like me, and they will come to this house. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage the Libons that are in the gallery through you, that I hope that amongst them, I will get my lawyer in future. I hope that amongst them, I will get my doctor in future. Because, Mr. Speaker, I don't trust the doctors in this house to treat me, particularly Dr. Senator, the whip, the senator for Kakamega. I cannot trust him with an injection. And so, Mr. Speaker...
Senator Kajwang, you're out of order, total out of order. We will not discuss the conduct of the senator for Kakamega. At least if he could be here to defend himself, it would be better. But you know, you want to attack him because he is not around. So please desist from that route. Actually, withdraw that statement that you can't trust him. You are on a national TV.
Mr. Speaker, with a lot of respect, I withdraw. I've spent the entire morning sitting next to the bullfighter, so I think he has infected me in a way. But I hope that the batch that is here will be our doctors in future, our lawyers, our engineers, our software engineers. They'll be the ones providing solutions to the challenges that this continent and this globe faces as far as climate change is concerned. They'll be the team that will take us to the metaverse. They'll be the team that will carry Elon Musk's ambition and the ambitions of other billionaires, that there could be life outside this planet and that we can explore and humanity can master the universe. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage the boys from Lenana. The reason why it is called changes, it changes people. They come in as villagers, but after 4 years, they are refined gentlemen. I want to encourage them to change from villagers, not to think of themselves as Luos, Kikuyus, Kambas, because this is a national school that admits boys from all corners of the country, that after 4 years, let them see themselves as Kenyans. And Mr. Speaker, I cannot fail to say this. Lenana is a school that has produced men, real men, not those other men who toss up and down, real men. And that is why Lenana was the best school when it came to rugby, Mr. Speaker, until the schools from Western Kenya came along. And because of the diet that they are fed on, the schools in Western Kenya, they are eating cassavas and yams and such starchy things for breakfast, while at Lenana, they are eating Yorkshire pudding and such exotic things. That is the reason why rugby moved from Lenana School, from St. Mary's School, from Nairobi School. I went to Musingu, where Sifuna went, and went to a few other miscellaneous schools in Western Kenya on account of the diet that they undertake. Mr. Speaker, I finalize by marveling that in this house, in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, I have met alumni of very great schools, Alliance, Stare, I've met Bomerians, I've met people from Kotet, I've met people from all the choice schools, even people from Yale, like Senator Eddie Okech. I am yet to meet in the corridors of parliament, even though I meet a lot of them in the corridors of county assemblies. I am yet to meet someone from Nairobi School who has made it to parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Nairobi School is our perennial rival, and on that account, there have been more senators, MPs, cabinet secretaries from Lenana School as compared to those from Nairobi School. Mr. Speaker, I welcome the boys and wish them success in the upcoming exams. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kajwang, these miscellaneous schools also have brought the senators to this house. I think I'm one of those who went to the miscellaneous schools. But we thank God. Let us hear Senator Okenyuri Esther, who is closer to them injuries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to join my colleague senators in welcoming the students from Changes. Back in my days in high school, I was in the Kenya High School, alias the Bomerians. Those were our brother schools for a very long time until I came out here. So to the boys in Lenana School, you have a very golden opportunity. Kenya is a land of all possibilities, and you've been privileged to be in that good school that other people have not had the opportunity to. And remember, you've actually made it to this Senate, so it's gone down in history. So when you go out there, do not disappoint the rest. And I want to differ with my good Senator, Senator Kajwang from Mutembei, on discouraging you from being politicians. Politics and political leadership needs a test of smart brains with clarity of mind, so that we also change how things are done in these platforms. So before you pursue your other ambitions, I also want to encourage you. I'm a young person like you are. I was in one of those privileged schools from a very humble background, but I've transited all the way to this national platform. So I want to encourage you that you have all the chances you do to explore your abilities and shine in this country, not only in your different careers that you want to take up, but also in political leadership. Education is the only other thing that makes all of us equal. So in this house, you can actually present your ideas so long as you sell your policies well to the people. So I want to discourage you from solely listening to what the good senator from Mutembei is saying, that Kenya does not need more politicians. We need political leadership so that we sort out most of these challenges we are facing as a country. You're welcome. Thank you.
Senator Richard Onyonka.
Ndugu Speaker, ningependa kusema asante sana kwa kunipa hii nafasi ili nichangie hili jambo la kuwakaribisha wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Lenana. Vile nimesikia ndugu yangu Mheshimiwa Kajwang amesema, mimi nilikuwa na bahati, sikuenda Lenana, lakini nilikuwa na bahati kusoma na ndugu yake ambaye anaitwa Joe Koto Kajwang, ambaye tulisoma naye katika shule ya upili ya Kisii. Baada hapo nadhani tulikuja tukakutana chuo kikuu cha Nairobi, na hapo ndio tulikutana na nduguye mkubwa Kajwang senator na yeye pia. Kwa hivyo ingawa tulienda kwa zile mashule ambako hata ukitafuta kwa runinga hazipatikani, tulijaribu sana tukakuja mpaka tumefika hapa mahali tupo. Jambo la pili ningependa kumwambia Mheshimiwa Kajwang na hawa wanafunzi wako hapa, sababu nimelazimika kuzungumza kwa lugha ya Kiswahili ni kwa sababu ningependa kuwasihi nyinyi vijana wadogo kuwa lugha ya taifa ni muhimu. Na hii lugha ya taifa kokote ambako utakuwa unatembea nchini Kenya, hata kwa ulimwengu, mtu akikuuliza wewe unatoka wapi, nasema Kenya, jambo la kwanza nakuuliza ni habari gani. Kwa hivyo ningependa kuwasihi wale wanafunzi ambao wanasoma katika shule ya upili ya Lenana, shule yenu ina jina nzuri, shule yenu ina heshima, kuna viongozi wengi sana wamesoma kwa hiyo shule yenu. Kwa hivyo ningependa kuwasihi nyinyi muwe na heshima, muhakikishe kuwa mna nidhamu, muendelee kufanya vizuri, kwa sababu sasa mababa wenu hawana utajiri mwingi. Ukisoma sasa, ile akili ambayo unatoa kwa masomo ndio inakupa nafasi ukatembea ulimwengu. Nadhani mmenielewa, na ningependa kuwaambia kuwa ikiwezekana angalia yale mawaidha ambayo tunatumia kwa hili jumba, standing orders, angalia katiba yetu, our constitution, ili muanze kujizoesha kujua ni lipi ambalo unataka kufanya ukitaka kuwa unatafuta kazi ya, kama ni kazi ya MCA ama unataka kuwa mbunge ama ukiwa seneta. Ndio ukifika hapa utapata kuwa unajua na unaelewa ni lipi ambapo tunafanya kwa hili jumba. Ningependa kuambia kuwa asante kwa kufika, na vile nimekaa hapa Mheshimiwa Kajwang amesema kuwa atanunulia soda kabla nyinyi hamjaondoka. Asante sana ndugu Speaker.
Senator Okech, are you saying you also at Lenana School?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did not go to Lenana School, but I went to a very pretty good school.
and I went to Friends School Kamusinga in Bungoma, and I can see even the faces of the students there getting excited because Friends School is a very good school. You know, our motto was use common sense. And, you know, Kajwang has struggled so much, Senator Kajwang has struggled so much with his own conflicted self of why should he stay in politics or should he go back and practice law. And I can assure you that that's an issue of common sense. Common sense because Kajwang has been very consistent in advising Changerians who have been able to come to this house not to go to politics. What I wanted to tell my friends, I think that I'm also very close to you age-wise, and sometimes I do have the privilege to be also close with you in terms of just experiences. You know, I can hear some whispers behind me, but that's fine. What I wanted to tell you is that you don't forget where you have come from. I think sometimes when you are balkanized into a group of students from Lenana, sometimes you can forget your backgrounds. What makes you you today is extremely the backgrounds that you come from. And if you look at your own individual backgrounds, you have got challenges and opportunities that you have faced in the past. And being in Lenana, therefore, means that your future is extremely important. And what I wanted to encourage you to do is that you don't arrive. Lenana is not the last place you want to go. The world should be your stage of play, but with regards to politics, I want to urge you to go and pursue all your dreams. Go and pursue your dreams and be whatever you want to be in this world. Be lawyers, be great doctors, be great engineers, but always remember that all those careers that we pursue them so that we can be able to contribute to the society. And the biggest contribution you can have in the society is contribution to have your seat where decisions about resources are made. And the decisions about resources are always made in politics. So politics is decisions about making resources that will affect you, your children in future, your families you have left at home, and it's the best science you can ever have. So don't be lured by Senator Kajwang to forget politics. What is affecting this country is that sometimes politicians we have had bad manners, and what I will encourage you is that you groom good values, you have clear vision about your lives, so that when you become a politician, you become a politician who cares about their people truly. And as I leave you, Jomo Kenyatta said that responsibility of nation building, which is what you're going to be participating on in the future, is going to be given to reliable custodians with good values. Be that custodian wherever you'll go, and especially when you find yourself in politics. I thank you and wish you well as you visit with us. And in case Kajwang forgot his wallet, he can consult with me as a neighbor, and I'll be able to show that you get your soda as you go home. Thank you so much.
Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon and a delegation from the British Army Unit Training Unit in Kenya, popularly known as BATUK. The delegation is undertaking a standard tour in the Senate. I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that we may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. 1, Major David Kalawa. 2, Warrant Officer 2, Vesi George. 3, Sergeant Galang Sudesh. Koplo Vakasegu Una. Lance Koplo Parvis Robin. Lance Koplo Lamosa Daniel. Mrs. Eunice Kinywa, Mrs. Jane Oyugi, and the last but not the least, Mr. Brian Ochieng. Honorable Senators, in the usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. Let me give the majority leader to welcome our visitors for 2-3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I join you in welcoming the visiting delegation from the British Army. Mr. Speaker, I am a big fan of the poetry works of Rudyard Kipling, and I love the way he refers to them as Tommies and bootnecks. It's good to have them with us this afternoon, because I know members of the Foreign Relations, National Security and Foreign Relations Committee have gone on a long digging spree many a times this session and previously, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we have a long-standing relationship between Kenya and the UK, with specific reference to the work that British Army do around the area of Nanyuki, Mr. Speaker, on this specific mission that brings this visiting delegation to this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you have been a visitor to Nanyuki, I know you can't be because that's your home area. Therefore, on many occasions, either for one reason or the other, when you're not at home in Meru, you find your way to Nanyuki. But the likes of Senator Eddie Okech and the rest of us who come from the western side of the country, whenever we visit Nanyuki, Nanyuki is testament of the thriving town of Nanyuki, is testament of the good work that this organization continues to do, Mr. Speaker. It's built out of, many businesses have been built out of either trading or any forms of relationship that exist, Mr. Speaker, between the local community and the Batuk organization, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, to have them visit us is a great honor. I know, Mr. Speaker, for a fact that it hasn't been extremely rosy. The last few years, there have been difficulties and difficult conversations. As you would expect of any human relationship, Mr. Speaker, there are times where things arise, but the most important thing is how you're able to amicably resolve and ensure that the long-standing relationship that Kenya enjoys with the UK continues. I know that our colleagues in the National Assembly did a tremendous work in ensuring that before renewing, because this cooperation agreement is renewed, I think almost every 5 years, that there are certain terms and conditions that were put in place to ensure that you protect both the soldiers and the local community, so that any matters that had previously arisen, based on the experience of the previous years, you're able to forestall and ensure that the soldiers that come to Kenya do enjoy their time. If you read, Mr. Speaker, the journals, and I am a favorite at this, of many soldiers, they give testament of whatever they studied and their experience in Nanyuki and how it impacted on their, later on in their careers as soldiers and army men and women, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this is a relationship that we need to guard jealously and ensure that it's mutually beneficial to both Kenya and the United Kingdom. Therefore, I do hope, Mr. Speaker, that in the duration of their stay, they will get to enjoy and learn all that there is to learn about this parliament. If they have many other questions, they're always welcome to interact with members of parliament that are here, the senators that are here, and those that are of the National Assembly, so that they can have a fulfillment of what they sought to do when they set on their calendar and programs to visit Parliament of Kenya this afternoon, Mr. Speaker. So I join you on behalf of our colleagues and all senators in the House this afternoon to welcome them and wish them a fruitful stay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Let us have the chairperson, Standing Committee on National Security and Foreign Relations.
Not on this one.
Yeah?
Not on this.
Okay, Senator Lelegwe, Steve Lumbesi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join you and the the Majority Leader and the rest of my colleagues to welcome the British Training Unit officers to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, sir, the British Training Unit is also a unit that trains in Samburu. And I wish to thank them and appreciate their efforts in working with the communities in Samburu and making sure that the marginalized communities get services, and I appreciate the good services they are giving the people by providing them water, building schools, and also doing medical camps to offer services, medical services to those communities. And these communities have been forgotten a long time ago by governments of Kenya, and I thank them because they're really doing good work in the communities. One thing that I need to urge them is that when they do this corporate social responsibility, which they are doing in Samburu and other parts of Kenya, is they should make sure that they involve the communities and also the leadership in those regions. And I appreciate because they have been inviting the leadership of the counties they operate in, and when they are making their decisions, and I encourage them to be making such decisions so that we make sure that communities get services and also they get humble time in doing their trainings in those regions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I had promised to give one more senator to make a comment on the statement by Senator Alsosi. So let me keep my promise. Senator William Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the statement by the Senator Osotsi on the issue of decassetment. Mr. Speaker, if you listen to all the members who spoke to this particular statement, it's like this is a challenge that is arising in almost every county. In fact, all the members who spoke to this statement have very specific issues and concerns in their counties. And Mr. Speaker, I would like to agree with the other members who say that I think there is need for the committee to look at this more holistically. I heard Honorable Onyonga requesting the majority leader to speak to the president about this issue. I think that is not the way to go. Mr. Speaker, the procedure normally is that these are matters that this House can take up, and in our counties, and they go to the ministries, the ministry in charge, then they do what we normally call the cabinet memoranda, then the cabinet approves, then it now comes to the House for adoption or for approval. So I want to agree in Baringo, for example, Mr. Speaker, we have several schools and institutions which are actually built in those areas that are considered as forest areas. But practically speaking, Chair or Speaker, those are several acres of land, you know, in schools, in colleges, and so on. And that, yet when you go to the Ministry of Forestry, you discover they are actually gazetted forest areas. I think it is important that we really decassette these areas and be able to issue titles to these institutions. I think it is a critical issue which we need to do. So that, Mr. Speaker, some schools, for example, or colleges, occupy those areas. They have no title deeds, and all the time they receive threats from the Ministry of Forest and with the rangers and so on. It is high time, I think, we need, so that even when we talk about now building, I mean, putting up or planting 15 billion trees, we should be able to do so even in those schools, but not as gazetted areas or as gazetted forest. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it is important. Then the other aspect, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, is there are areas which are not gazetted, which have been degazetted, given to institutions, and the original owners of those particular lands, Mr. Speaker, are not actually compensated. And the understanding between the government then and the occupants of those areas is to be given land elsewhere. And Mr. Speaker, those days it was interesting because you find a politician from a certain area given a list of people to be allocated land. And that MP or minister takes the whole portion of land given to those people. So I think, again, those people who had been promised to be given, to be compensated and given allocation of land, they are now all over the place, suffering in their homes and so on. The so-called right holders, Mr. Speaker. In a place like Baringo North, in Baringo County, Simo location, a lot of fellows were displaced. So I think I want to agree that there is need for the committee to, and I think I'm a member of this committee, Mr. Speaker, and we are going to really do a lot in terms of ensuring that we don't only look at Otso's situation, but also what's happening in the country, so that we bring an end to the suffering of people and institutions without title deeds for their institutions. So I support, Mr. Speaker.
Let us get the last statement from Senator Christo Asige.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am also joining the rest of the House in welcoming the delegations upstairs in the gallery. Though I wasn't a student, of course, at Lenana School, I did spend a lot of time studying in the UK, Bristol specifically, which is famous for its harborside, the St. Paul's Carnival, and, Mr. Speaker, it has very, very good beer. So I hope that the delegation who are here, as I did, find a home away from home in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on claims of inaccurate data of persons with disabilities, PWDs, in official data collections efforts reflected in the National Census of 2019. In this statement, the committee should state the disability prevalence rate in Kenya, recorded in the last 4 years, disaggregating these figures into gender, age, type of disability, and county. State steps in place to ensure that all PWDs, including children under the age of 5, are properly accounted for in disability statistics and data collection efforts, tabling evidence of capitation released to the NCPWD to cater for this special interest group in the last 4 years. Shed light on allegations that 413,620 PWDs who are counted in the National Census of 2009 were not accounted for in the census of 2019, stating measures in place to improve the accuracy and comprehensiveness to improve disability statistics. State targeted interventions to improve the current tools in use and training accorded to all enumerators to ensure full inclusivity and accounting of physical, sensory, and neurodiverse disabilities, both visible and invisible. And lastly, state plans to engage public and key stakeholders towards State plans to engage the public and key stakeholders toward audit census tools for the comprehensiveness of questions, designs, and categorization of disability status. I thank you.
Thank you. I can see some requests here, but I don't know whether they are in support of this statement by Senator Asige. Those who are not interested on this particular one, maybe you can withdraw the cans. Senator Manzo Daniel, very brief comments, just to make.
Yeah, brief, yes. I rise to support that statement by a wonderful senator. I want to say that the place of people with a disability in this country has been left without proper legal structures at times, whether they fall under national or county, And it's really been hard, but what I want to ask the senators and members of parliament is to give them a special place. Like you see, part of my employees, I have taken 1 or 2 people with disabilities. It's one way of helping them and encouraging them. I have an adult who looks like a 7-year-old man, but he's an adult who works for my office. And we really need to support the cause of the people with disability, make sure that the ones who are hidden in the villages are produced, are come out and are able to participate, are able to go to school. And I believe as a wonderful senator is doing, who is very well learned and is able to become a senator. All these people have a chance and are able to, are very much able to do whatever a normal person can be able to do. So I support, and also Speaker, allow me to welcome the delegations and say that I went to Starehe Boys Center where we were brought up by a British soldier, a former British soldier, who brought up 15,000 poor boys who are big-time people in the world today. And I was also privileged to have my fees paid by Princess Anne, the daughter of the Queen of England. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator Manzo. Senator Bugwa Mungai George.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise here to support the statement by Senator Sige. And on the onset, want to state that, Mr. Speaker, data is everything. And because of the inaccurate statistics for the persons with disabilities in this country, the resources allocated to that sector have been dwindling over the years. And we are unable to get the services which are enshrined in the constitutions for persons living with disabilities because of the inaccurate data. So, Mr. Speaker, I support so that this sector can get what is rightfully theirs. Thank you.
Senator Baz Sheikh Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the statement from Honorable Sige. Mr. Speaker, you know this well, I'm in this country. We have so many disabled, but however, services and all work given to them is not actually adequate. And most instances have been neglected so much. It's a high time that this country should take serious and give a quota, as they have already, already enshrined in the Constitution, that the disabled, actually disability is not in the inability. That actually shows Honorable Sige is perfectly in this house as a representative of the disabled group. And you can see how she contributes every day. And it's very, very active. And I want to congratulate her on that. It's a high time that we need to give space, we need to support the disabled, that we need to give them enough resources so at least they can be able to contribute in the national work, national required functions that they're able to do. I remember when I was back when I was a member of parliament, I built a school for the disabled, especially for the deaf. And I'm really impressed today. Those students actually doing a wonderful job. I was really impressed that they did very well. For the last 3 years, they did the KCC, and they performed very well. I think only the thing is that we're not giving enough opportunity and resources to the disabled persons. I therefore support the statement, and I need to be serious on these things, and this country needs to be serious on the issues of disability. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The last one, Senator Sengo Karunda Beth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise also to support this statement by Senator Christo Asike, aka VIP. Actually, in this country, we really need to support people who are differently abled. And they also contributing to the building of the nation. We know they are differently abled. They are talented differently. They can serve the nation also in a unique way. So we need to support them at both levels, at the national government, the county governments, and if actually a fund could be put forward to support them differently. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, sir, I just wanted to know, as the argument is going forward about CDF, about GAF for the women reps, and also the kitty for senators. Can we also have a kitty for people living with disability in this country? This will support and encourage many to take leadership at different levels. I support the statement, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you.
Senator Madago Jackson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the statement sought by Senator Asike on the issues of persons with disability. Mr. Speaker, without proper data, it will be impossible for this country to be able to plan effectively for persons with disability. And Mr. Speaker, when you see statistics that are not consistent, it means even government interventions that are supposed to go towards supporting persons with disability in this country will be so inconsistent and doesn't make any meaningful progress, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I therefore rise to support the statement by Senator Asige that through the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, they need to supply proper data of persons with a disability. And Mr. Speaker, as I rise to support this statement, we also want to encourage families in this country, Mr. Speaker, who have persons living with disability or children with various disabilities, to make sure that those children are brought to the fore and are given opportunity to access education. We know in some cultures in this country that when people have children with disability, there's a tendency to hide those children, and probably that is also what would contribute to them not being counted during the census. But we want to urge Kenyans of all walks of life that having a child with disability does not mean that that child cannot make any meaningful contribution to this country. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, having been a governor in Uasin Gishu County, we were able to recruit over 100 persons with disability. And I can tell you, amongst the best public servants we had are persons with disability. Mr. Speaker, if you visited the county government of Uasin Gishu in the executive, all our executive officers were being cleaned by deaf people. And I can tell you they were very effective and very efficient. As a nation, we need to properly plan for people with disability. And I want to reiterate here, Mr. Speaker, that there is need for compliance to the laws that have already been provided for. For example, Mr. Speaker, if you go to all government offices, accessibility to those offices are still a challenge. You therefore don't expect them to be able to seek services like other citizens with ease, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this statement, and the committee should further probe on other funds that has been set aside for persons with disability, particularly funds that go through the offices program, Mr. Speaker, because sometimes they don't end up in the intended recipients. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this statement. Thank you.
The last one from Senator Mwalumba Jones Mwashushe. Senator Mwalumba.
There's a problem. Okay. Yeah. Nashukuru Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa hii fursa ili kuchangia taarifa ambayo imeletwa na seneta mteule, Seneta Asige, kuhusu mambo ya watu wanaoishi na ulemavu. Katika taarifa yake amesema ya kwamba hakuna takwimu za kutosha za watu wanaoishi na ulemavu. Na vile wasemaji wamesema, waliotangulia kusema, wamesema kwamba bila takwimu ama data hatuwezi panga mambo ya walemavu. Na kusema ule kweli, Mheshimiwa Spika, Kenya tuko na shida ya kuangazia mambo ya watu wanaoishi na ulemavu. Leo tulikuwa katika kamati ya elimu tukitunga sheria ya disability bill, na tulikuwa tunahusisha wadau katika ile sheria, na tulipata mambo ya kushangaza sana ya kwamba kuna wanafunzi wengi ama wafanyikazi wengi katika mashule ambao hawajalipwa mishahara kwa miezi 9, 10 na zaidi. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika shule za wanaoishi na ulemavu zinahitaji walimu, lakini kando na walimu, Mheshimiwa Spika, wale wanahitajika ni wale caregivers ama watu ambao wataangalia wale watoto. Wengine wanahitaji kuoshwa, wengine wanahitaji kusukumwa sehemu moja hadi nyingine. Kwa hivyo tutaangalia hii taarifa kwa undani, na naomba kamati ya Labor na Social Welfare iangalie kwa undani, kwa sababu wakati wa bunge la 12 tulisukuma sana ile Ministry ya Labor na Social Welfare ipate kupata takwimu za kutosha na kuandikisha wale wote wanaoishi na ulemavu na kuhakikisha kwamba wameenda shuleni. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, nashukuru sana Senator Asige na anafanya kazi nzuri ya kupigania wale wanaoishi na ulemavu Kenya. Tutangojea hiyo ripoti ambayo itakuja kutoka kwa hiyo kamati, na najua mambo ya walemavu yatazidi, lakini hasa katika kila kaunti tupate takwimu ama data ya kutosha ya wale ambao wanaishi na ulemavu na zile pesa ambazo wanahitaji kupata kama kwa inua jamii wote wawe wanaweza kupata. Kwa hivyo nashukuru Mheshimiwa Asige na asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa hiyo nafasi.
Senator Sige, 2 minutes, kindly.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. I would like to also add my voice to the statement by the Honorable Senator Asige. Mr. Speaker, when we speak about the inaccuracy of the data about persons living with disability in this country, it is not only a matter of subject which speaks into the Social and Labor Committee. Mr. Speaker, the latest census that we had in this country has got a percentage of 2.2% of people living with disability. That translates to 0.9 million people. Failure to have an accurate data in itself, Mr. Speaker, affects the inability of the government of the day and any other government institution, whether at the county level or at the national level, to mainstream and operationalize the demands that persons living with disability are required. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, there is the Global Summit where the government of Kenya undertook to implement and mainstream services, rights, and entitlements to persons with disability. And it is going to be very unfortunate because there is no way we can implement those commitments if we do not have the appropriate and accurate data on persons living with disability. I want to appreciate my colleague, Sister Senator Asige, for taking it up and also championing the rights of people living with disability. And in this case, I want to encourage the Labor Committee, whose responsibility this statement has been given, to ensure that it goes beyond just getting the data, but also going to confirm that that data is a representation of the people from the youngest to the person who is in their sunset years and they are disabled and they need the support of the government of the day. Mr. Speaker, I support and I thank the Honorable Senator Sige for the bold step that she took. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, the time allocated for statements is over. Actually, you are hinting into the other businesses time. So I kindly request the two senators who have put their request maybe to take 1 minute each kindly. Senator Onyonka.
I would like to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the minute to speak. I am actually humbled to listen to what my brother Council and Madam Asige have raised about this matter. And I would like to raise this issue with the Labour Committee in this Senate to make sure that when they begin to pick views and they're beginning to engage, they involve as many of us as possible, because many of our counties, Mr. Speaker, don't have any data, information, and anything to do with people with disability until when the campaigns come, that's when we just call them and meet them around. I think we need to be more serious and let us take these challenges very deeply because they're affecting our people. Thank you, Madam Asige, for being a very good example of somebody who's been nominated to represent that community. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Professor Kamal Jebkoech.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me the 1 or 2 minutes to add my voice to the statement that was raised by Senator Asike. I want to thank her for doing this. Mr. Speaker, it is true that data doesn't seem to be correct. Not just the data of the people with disabilities, but even children with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, there has to be a way in which we can know our children from when they are young. And as the committee looks at that, let them also look at our schools, because some schools register children one term, the next term they have new children, they don't have other children. I think this question is very important because it's going to open our minds on which solutions we should really be dealing with, or how we are going to approach this. Because we also know, Mr. Speaker, that the issue of disability has been associated with witchcraft and has been associated with so many other things. The side that people are embarrassed, some children are being locked in rooms, some children are being closed. So looking for data is going to be a very challenging thing, but we want to look for ways in which we can get to know who actually our disabled children are, people are. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we need to actually ask ourselves, is this the responsibility of a mother who gave birth to a disabled child, or it should be the responsibility of a nation that receives tax? We need to see how we can move that burden away from the parents, because, Mr. Speaker, you realize that if you have 4 children and one of them is disabled, you'll spend 50% of your time with the disabled child and 50% for the other 3 children, which means there are many challenges. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All the statements start committing to the relevant committees, standing committees of this House. Honorable Senators, in the public gallery, we have 97 students accompanied by 6 teachers from Mununga High School in Nakuru County who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Senators, in a short tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 8, the Natural Resources Benefit Sharing Bill, Senate Bills number 6 of 2022, second reading, division.
Yeah, the delegations are not enough. We don't have enough numbers to get this vote. So we defer that business. Then we go to the next order.
Order number 9, the County Vocational Education and Training Bill, Senate Bills number 3 of 2022, second reading.
Honorable Senators, we concluded debate on this motion, and now I call upon the mover to reply. Senator Kajwan, Moses.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker,
and Senator Okech, you should know where to raise point of order. I think the Speaker, Right Honorable Amason Kingi, has given very clear directions on when to raise a point of order. A point of order is raised when another member is contributing to anything, not just any time you raise point of order. What is which chair standing order and what is out of order?
Speaker, I respect your guidance, but a point of order can be raised any time. Sometimes, even on the matter that I want to raise point of order on, Mr. Speaker,
Under which standing order?
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I was instructed by your chair.
By my chair?
Yes, by the chair, by the Speaker, that today, at the beginning of the business of this House, I was supposed to present evidence on the motion that I brought yesterday in this House with regards to the issue of national security in the country. And it is in our standing orders that for whichever names that a member of this House brings in any motion, there ought to be substantiated. And Mr. Speaker, that I thought would have been, when I didn't get any direction from your chair, I thought for the purposes of this House, as a House of record, it would be important for me.
Let us give Senator Kajwang time to reply. Then I'll give you some time to substantiate the issues that I am directing. There are some issues that you want to be substantiated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kajwang, let us conclude with this motion first.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply, having moved the motion on the bill for the county vocational education and training, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all my colleagues who have contributed to debate on this bill, from the leader of majority, who employed his institutional memory as a ranking member of the finance committee to tell the House the origins of this bill that we started processing in the last parliament but was not successful, and so we decided to revive it in this House. Mr. Speaker, the leader of majority cited the conditional allocation of 40 million per county that this House has appropriated for a period of 3 years. And we had realized that counties were receiving that money, and yet we didn't have a very good framework that would separate village polytechnics and homecraft centers from the purview of the TVET authority. Mr. Speaker, several other members contributed to the debate on the bill. Senator Mungatana brought the attention of the mover to certain litigation that has been ongoing with regards to employees of these village polytechnics and vocational centers, some of whom are still in the payroll of the national government. And Mr. Speaker, that was a very good observation, because we must ensure that as we devolve this function fully, we must also look at the human resource, and we must also look at the financial resources. Mr. Speaker, Senator Ledamo Lekina talked about the recognition of prior learning, and that this bill must attempt to entrench that in law. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that the National Qualifications Authority, together with the TVET Authority, already are in conversation to ensure that prior learning can be recognized, so that that Otieno, who is a very talented panel beater somewhere in California, in Nairobi, can be formalized. Mr. Speaker, I believe those who are talking about hustlers and those who really believed in the agenda of hustlers would be happy if we can bring these people into the formal economy. And that can be done through recognition of prior learning, so that our experienced and our expert painters, experienced and expert mechanics, experienced and expert masons who do not have any certification can be recognized on their prior experience, and that can now allow them to tap into jobs in county governments and jobs in the formal sector. Mr. Speaker, there were a lot of observations. The Senator for Kiambu advised that we should not over-legislate for small businesses. Mr. Speaker, this legislation is to guide the establishment of vocational centers by county governments. There is still going to be space for private sector players. And Mr. Speaker, when it comes to vocational training, the private sector has played a very, very important role It is not the intention of this bill to regulate every college or every apprentice operation or every training operation around the corner or every driving school. But, Mr. Speaker, in as much as we want a thriving private sector within the vocational training space, there has to be quality, there has to be standards, there has to be regulation, and we must ensure that there is consumer protection. And that consumer protection is protection of the students and pupils from exploitation by the owners of those institutions, especially those that are private. Mr. Speaker, more than 10 senators spoke to this bill. And I want to commit to the House that I will look at the Hansard very, very carefully. I will also look at the report of the Education Committee very carefully. And once again, I want to thank members of the Education Committee. They've done an excellent job. They have already drafted proposed amendments. And, Mr. Speaker, I agree largely with most of those amendments. I also agree with many of the submissions that were made by members on the floor of this House. We will very, very quickly ensure that the necessary amendments are processed and that this bill can leave this House. And, Mr. Speaker, I know Senator Mugatana has beaten me to the position of having his bill being the first being processed by the Senate. It doesn't matter. His bill is extremely important. This is extremely important. We should be seen to be sending legislation to the National Assembly, legislation that goes beyond those that are prescribed in the Constitution, like DORA and CARA. And I want to encourage my colleagues with private members' bills also to follow suit so that we can flood the inbox of the National Assembly with legislation that is meant to make devolution work. Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply, and pursuant to Standing Order 66.3, I beg that the putting of the question be deferred to a later date. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you. Permission granted. So we go to the next order. No, Senator Okech, where is he now to prosecute his matter? Senator Okech, you have the floor.
Thank you once again, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I did bring a motion on under Standing Order number 37 on a matter of national importance, namely the deteriorating security situation in the country. And as I was moving my motion, Mr. Speaker, the Senator for Kakamega, Senator Boni Alwale, did question my evidence on a statement that I made in this House that some pronounced leaders of this country did make statements or pronouncements that was tantamount to inciting the public to the attacks that we saw in private property of President Uhuru Kenyatta and to the Prime Minister Raila Odinga's property called Spectre. And Mr. Speaker, the chair did direct that I substitute that statement, for which the chair did ask that today I bring evidence to the same effect. Mr. Speaker, I'm on a point of order. Mr. Speaker, the Evidence Act does require under Section 8 that if I'm in a court of law, then I provide an affidavit to the same. But in the spirit also of this House, I want to recognize that social media statements, videos that are journalistic, as well as any publication that is journalistic, amounts to evidence. And Mr. Speaker, I'm going to table here an order from office of the director.
Allow him to table so that also the
you respond what I've tabled. You don't just make noise.
If there are substance from the.
I am telling you what I'm tabling, my friend.
What is
Mr. Speaker, I'm on a point of order, Mr. Speaker. I haven't tabled anything. What is responding
Just
to?
resume your seat, Senator.
It's becoming cantankerous.
Senator Okech, resume your seat.
I'm lecturing you because you are ignorant.
The point of order. Senator Okech, Senator Boni Karware, Senator Okech, both of you should be honorary in this house. Please, Senator Okech.
Mr. Speaker, I rose on a point of order to draw your attention to the fact of the requirements of standing order number 105, responsibility for a statement of fact. That's a standing order upon which Eddie was challenged. So far, Senator Eddie has spent 5 minutes, almost close to 10, explaining absolutely nothing, Mr. Speaker. If you read the provisions of standing order number 105, there is no justification or there is no requirement upon the senator to give an explanation of anything. All Senator Eddie needs to do, Mr. Speaker, and you need to read 105 too, is to say, Mr. Speaker, I hereby table the evidence, lack of which he is supposed to withdraw. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want you to guide this House properly, and it is important for the House to remember, because, Mr. Speaker, you didn't guide that yesterday the words of Senator Eddie Okech, Mr. Speaker, were that Mr. Rigathi Gachagua, together with Kimani Ichung'wah, who is a majority leader in the National Assembly, as well as Moses Kuria, who is a cabinet secretary, convened and made public pronouncements leading to these problems. They made public pronouncement to the extent then he was interrupted by a point of order. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, reading standing order number 105-2, can you guide that Senator Eddie Okech without telling us long stories that are not useful at this point? Can he table the evidence before us, Mr. Speaker?
Majority, and actually, that is what I was requesting him to do, to table the evidence. Then we assess whether your evidence is admissible. So that if it is not, you go ahead to withdraw. Or you go to look for evidence and give you more time.
Mr. Speaker, I have watched my friend Senator Arun Cheriot here tabling things, and he explains what the things is tabling, Mr. Speaker. I am tabling and I'm explaining what I'm tabling.
Can you table your
evidence? I talked about 3 issues that you cannot gag me just to table them without telling you what I'm tabling, Mr. Speaker.
Now, proceed and table the evidence.
Yeah, so I have to tell you what I'm tabling, my friend. Yeah, so, Mr. Speaker, the first evidence that I'm tabling, both in hard copy here, as well as in a flash disk of videos, Mr. Speaker, are pronouncements by Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah on 18th March 2023 at Kianyanga in Kirinyaga County. And I am also tabling here the pronouncement by Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, stated that the government is a private company where, I mean, a number of them here on the 18th of February 2023 in Kericho County. And Mr. Speaker, I'm also tabling here statements by Honorable C.S. Moses Kuria on his Twitter handle, and there are a number of them, because I don't want to get majority whip worked up, because I'll table it, Mr. Speaker.
Table the evidence.
And the bone is, don't be worked up.
So
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
as we scrutinize your evidence, we continue with the business of the day. No, wait. Next order. I'll see you next time. I'll see you next time.
But you have said something very dangerous that should not be in the record of the House.
No, at this point you cannot raise a point of order, kindly, Senator Medo. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, amendment of the Senate calendar for the second session.
Majority Leader, this is your motion. Amendment of the Senate calendar. It's like your mind was moved by the previous contributor was on the floor.
Mr. Speaker, this is a motion that, notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate on the approval of the Senate calendar made on 16 February 2023, and noting the resolutions of the Senate made on Thursday, 23rd of March 2023, on the fifth report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on the amendments to the standing orders of the Senate, and pursuant to Standing Order number 32-4, the Senate resolves to amend its calendar, regular sessions of the Senate of the second session 2023 to provide for morning sittings on Wednesday, pursuant to Standing Order number 34. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is not the first time that the Senate will be sitting on Wednesday mornings. You will recall, Mr. Speaker, that previously we've had sessions where on Wednesday morning the Senate met and transacted business. But over the course of time, when it became clearly evident, Mr. Speaker, that members were more keen on being before committees in the morning hours of Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and sometimes even Fridays, then as a House we did resolve, Mr. Speaker, to have our sittings just be on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, from 2:30 to 6:30, unless the House is otherwise moved, Mr. Speaker. But since this House has now adopted, Mr. Speaker, the provisions of the Standing Order in agreement to what our Procedures and Rules Committee proposed before the House to provide for Cabinet Secretaries to appear before this House, Mr. Speaker, we want to propose additional time for the Senate to meet so that we do not interrupt the Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays 2:30, that is mostly otherwise filled up, Mr. Speaker, either considering motions on various issues that are topical to the country, or statements that are being brought by members, Mr. Speaker, or bills, such as the bills that you want to consider this afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, it is in good order that I requested the SPC, and they agreed with us, that we move this motion to allow that the Senate does meet every Wednesday, and the questions as provided for in the motion that we moved here, Mr. Speaker, to provide for different cabinet secretaries to be notified way in advance of time, the questions that they shall be asked, so that members can show up in this House, Mr. Speaker, and we agree, depending on how the first 2 or 3 sessions will go, the length of time that you're going to spend, Mr. Speaker. These are things that we said that once we begin on the exercise, and depending on the interest of members and the questions and the issues that are arising from the constituents that we represent in this House, Mr. Speaker, we shall be able to determine how many, for example, cabinet secretaries we can have in a single Wednesday afternoon, and depending on the issues that have been brought before us. Mr. Speaker, therefore, this is a fairly straightforward matter. I do not see why anybody, Mr. Speaker, for whatever reason, will have a problem with it. But of course, I do not want to preempt debate. I want to leave it to the wisdom of the House to either agree with us, either as proposed or together with an amendment, Mr. Speaker, so that this House can meet on Wednesday mornings and consider, Mr. Speaker, that there is business that is actually long-standing and pending. Part of what we could do, Mr. Speaker, and we will be suggesting this to the Senate Business Committee, is that if you look through our order paper, Mr. Speaker, this afternoon. There are almost 10 to 20 motions that have been proposed by various colleagues, which because of the nature of how we transact business in this House, unfortunately we have not been able to consider them. Some of these motions have been on the order paper for almost 3 or 4 months, and it's not right, Mr. Speaker. Part of what we could do on those mornings of Wednesday, Mr. Speaker, if you find that we have met and we have concluded on the business and members are satisfied that the business that had been slated earlier, our Cabinet Secretary has responded sufficiently, or asked for additional time, Mr. Speaker, to find better answers to bring before the House, we could as well consider other long-standing businesses that are before the order paper, Mr. Speaker, so that we don't have this practice where colleagues are proposing motions. I don't believe it is out of idleness, Mr. Speaker, or just for want of to fill up the order paper that colleagues propose motions before us. Therefore, it's unfair that we have kept some of these motions on the order paper for more than a month or two, Mr. Speaker. So giving the Senate additional time to meet means actually we shall be able to transact more business, Mr. Speaker, as a House. And therefore, I want to request colleague senators to agree with this proposal so that we can quickly be able to conclude on this business and move on to additional business. Of course, Mr. Speaker, I do know, and I want to appreciate your guidance yesterday, Mr. Speaker, because there had been an erroneous interpretation that by Cabinet Secretaries appearing before this House, Mr. Speaker, in a gathering of the plenary, that they are not required to appear before the committees as expected by Article 153 of our Constitution. I appreciate, Mr. Speaker, that yesterday you gave clear guidelines that cabinet ministers will still appear before our committees of parliament, the committees of Senate, Mr. Speaker, to respond to other ordinary business that was pending or that will arise in the course of members of the various committees going about their duties, Mr. Speaker. That lays to rest that particular matter. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, given that this is a fairly straightforward matter, I do not intend to be long about it because I believe it's something that colleagues can read, understand, and appreciate it. With those very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and request that the Senator for Kakamega, the Dr. Boni Halwale, to second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Boni Karwale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to second motion, this motion as moved. Mr. Speaker, it was Michael Kijana Wamalwa, the late Vice President of the Republic of Kenya, who, while speaking from this dispatch box, said, in politics, if it is possible, it's always good to let a good idea yield to a better idea. It is true, our old calendar has served us very well. It's been a good idea. But if we can allow it to yield to the new calendar as proposed by the Leader of the Majority, Mr. Speaker, it will be a better idea. Why? Only time is going to prove us right. Honorable members, in the good old days, when we were in the National Assembly, we had a session reserved for questions. And when we opened up Parliament to public transmission of proceedings, that became the most watched part of the proceedings of this House. I therefore want to confirm that Wednesday mornings will be the most popular day in the calendar of this week, every week. And Senator Onyonga was there. He remembers when he was Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs, and I was Assistant Minister in charge of the East African community. And by the way, Assistant Ministers of Mwai Kibaki were actually Deputy Ministers. I support this motion. I second this motion, and I want to appeal to members that there is so much value in one raising a question on gold mining in Kakamega directly to the minister in charge, and him not only responding, but opening an avenue for the senator of Migori, for example, to then ask a supplementary question about mining in Migori. This is the point. This is the point. And Mr. Speaker, because we want to ask for more and get more, the saying goes, to those who more is given, more is expected of them. And therefore, members, I want to appeal that again, the usual headache of quorum when we open session, let it not remove the wind from our sails. We should try and be here. And when I look, most of the members in this house, what is the median age here? The median age here could be around 41, 40, 41? Yeah, very young people. Why would you still be in bed at that time? I remember in the other parliament, when the senator of Meru was arguing his case, he used to say he starts functioning best at around 1 o'clock. The former senator of Meru.
Senator Mudhamia, who was in 1963.
No, I mean the second senator.
And Senator Miveka Linturi.
Yes, great.
Which one? Which senator? For the purpose of record, because I did not hear
I'm very specific and factual.
Kiraitu Murungi.
It was Senator Kiraitu Murungi who used to amuse us from this house that he starts functioning best at around 1 o'clock. So we don't have that problem anymore. Even me, who has more years than most of you, I am in the element of a bullfighter. Bullfighters, we start feeding our bulls at 4 a.m. in the morning. And after I finish feeding the bulls, I normally support my workers in milking my cows. I have got my favorite cow. It is called a tambo. A tambo likes it when I'm milking myself. So we are people who wake up early. Amida, you are killing me with your laughter. So, Mr. Speaker, sir. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, with those many words, I want to second that this motion becomes, sees the day of the light. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Senators, I propose a question that notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate on the approved the Senate calendar amended on 16th February 2023, and noting the resolution of the Senate made on Thursday 23rd March 2023 on the 5th report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on the amendments of the standing orders of the Senate, and pursuant to standing order that 2-4, the Senate resolves to amend its calendar regular sessions of the Senate for the second session 2023 to provide for morning sittings on Wednesdays pursuant to standing order that 4. Senator Kibwana Ali Aminda, continue amusing the majority whip.
Asante Bwana Spika. No, na mimi nataka kuunga mkono tu upande majority leader akisema kuwa tunafaa kuendelea kufanya kazi. Kusema kweli, sisi wengine ni watu wa mkono, ni technical people na si watu wa siasa sana. Kwa hivyo tungetaka kweli motions nyingi ziko. Kama Bwana Speaker, kuanzia wiki moja imepita, niko na statement yangu na niko na motion na mpaka sasa haijafika. Nimeona vitu vingi kweli havijakuwa sawa. Kuna motion kama ya dada yetu Senator Gloria, na kusema kweli hii motion ni kitu ya maana sana ya wasichana wetu kuwa na hii mambo ya sanitary towels. Nimeona motion nyingine ya Senator Kavindu, mambo ya 1998 bombing compensation. Kwa hivyo naona kusema kweli kuna mambo mengi sana yamekaa na yamechelewa sana kwa kwa sisi kuendelea na kazi zetu. Kwa hivyo hapo nitamunga bwana majority leader mkono kwa hii kazi tu, kusema kweli iweze kuendelea. Asante bwana Speaker.
Asante sana. Sasa tumsikize Seneta wa Baringo Kipkorir William Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion. Mr. Speaker, this motion is fairly straightforward, actually. We've amended our standing orders already, and what we are doing is to facilitate the implementation of that amendment. Mr. Speaker, if you look at Article 97 of the Constitution, this House is to represent the counties and serve to protect the interests of the counties and their governments. Mr. Speaker, I agree we do so through the statements, but I think, Mr. Speaker, motions and the bills are equally critical in us as a House serving our counties. Mr. Speaker, I have two motions. I think they are before you for approval. And already one member has already spoken about another one. Shortly, Mr. Speaker, our order paper will be full of so many motions, and we are unable to deal with them, Mr. Speaker. So I support this, so that, Mr. Speaker, we are able to deal with these motions because we'll have more time. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the issue of the cabinet secretaries appearing before this House is something that I cherish. Mr. Speaker, when I was supporting the amendment of our standing orders, I gave a practical example of what used to happen in the 10th Parliament when ministers used to appear before the plenary. And Mr. Speaker, this is important because these members will have a direct conversation on behalf of our people with the cabinet ministers. And Mr. Speaker, this will be one of the very exciting moments. I recall that time, Bonnie Kalwale, as I recall, we were together with him when he was Assistant Minister for Health, if I'm not wrong. I was deputizing the Minister for Justice. Mungatana, I think, was Deputy Minister in some ministry. And Mr. Speaker, I want just to tell my colleagues, you will see how exciting that moment will be, because it will be direct conversation with the ministers. And during that time, Mr. Speaker, I remember I helped a lot of colleagues in establishing courts in various parts of the country, including even where you come from, Mr. Speaker. So I really want to support this, and I think this is a motion that we need to approve it as quickly as possible, Mr. Speaker, so that then we move, so that we have our matters, we have more time to deal with the matters before the House. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kajwang Moses.
Mr. Speaker, this is a procedural motion, and the best practice for procedural motions usually is for the leader majority to move and get a member of the other side to second, because I believe that this is a matter that was discussed in the Senate Business Committee. It is a matter that ideally should not be contentious. I know we have been consulting here on whether Standing Order 32 and Standing Order 34 have been violated by this move. And I know that my colleagues will be prosecuting that matter. But in our Senate, where we have spent more time fighting than finding common ground, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage the majority leader that on such procedural matters, that we can have some bipartisanship, so that you can have both sides speaking to it. Mr. Speaker, the debate that prompted this amendment to the Senate calendar was rancorous and was contentious. We had our say, the majority had their way. And what we said about the intent of getting cabinet secretaries to this House, Mr. Speaker, has gone on record. It is in the Hansard, And I don't think this is a motion for us to speak to the issues that we already prosecuted while debating the report of the Rules and Procedure Committee. Mr. Speaker, this is quite unavoidable since last week that resolution was carried. But it's going to have some impact on some of the busy committees, especially committees that have scheduled their activities and meetings into the next quarter. And some of those are like the Public Accounts Committee that I chair, the Public Investments Committee, which has a fairly busy schedule. And so, Mr. Speaker, from time to time, we might be seeking the leave of the Speaker to have meetings even when the grilling of cabinet secretaries is going on. Mr. Speaker, last week, I saw something very interesting. The former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, was called before the Rules Committee of the House of Commons. And the Speaker, in a session that lasted 3 hours and 45 minutes, the former Prime Minister, a man who was extremely powerful, a man who was extremely pompous, was reduced to the level of a witness before a committee. And the interesting thing is that being a parliamentary system, the former Prime Minister was appearing before a committee of his peers in the Conservative Party and his other peers from Labour Party. We should know and we should institutionalize that being in the executive does not make you a special animal in this country. Mr. Speaker, we should encourage those people who have had the good favor and the privilege of serving this country in the executive. Yes, they've got access to resources, they've got access to decisions that can enrich, decisions that can impoverish, decisions that can change people's lives. They must remember that those functions that they exercise on behalf of the people of Kenya. And Mr. Speaker, every time we talk about the people of Kenya, we refer to Article 1 of the Constitution. And many a times I've heard people say that that right has been given to me by the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, there are countries without constitutions. The right is not given by the Constitution, the right is given by God. The Constitution is a mere record of that right and the social contract between the led and the leaders. Mr. Speaker, when the cabinet secretaries come to this house, I said it last week, that perhaps they will regret why they came here. Mr. Speaker, I've sat with many members across the divide when interrogating financial accounts from governors. And Mr. Speaker, when the Senate is on one side and the executive is on the other side, what I've seen is excellent bipartisanship. I want to encourage everyone in this house, when a cabinet secretary comes here, do not look at him as Kenya Kwanza, do not look at him as a man from your tribe, do not look at him as a friend of yours. Let the Senate be the Senate. And that is why in the editorial of yesterday's newspapers, Mr. Speaker, if you saw the editorial cartoon, parliamentary oversight was depicted as a corpse lying on a slab with many daggers on its back. Mr. Speaker, that tells you the mood of the public as far as the role of this parliament is concerned. Let us use this opportunity for us to rise above parochial and partisan interests. Let us use this opportunity to convince the nation that legislative oversight that was depicted as lying comatose on a slab has been revived, and that this Senate will be that house where, because we are fewer, we are able to make more meaningful questions, we are able to guide conversation, we are able to put the executive to task. Mr. Speaker, there have been many ways, avenues for policy positions to come to this house. Just last week, we approved the budget policy statement. Every year, the president is required to come to parliament to make an exposition of public policy. And Mr. Speaker, the motion that follows a presidential address is that the Senate to register its thanks to the president for exposition of public policy contained in the presidential address. There has been no shortage of opportunities for public policy to be brought here. We are going to use this chamber, that is assuming no one goes to court and invalidates what we did last week. We are going to use this chamber. So, Speaker, I'm not trying to threaten anybody, but it's going to be a torture chamber for those who have the habit of misusing the instruments of power that they wield. It will be an accountability chamber for those who think that they can hide in their ivory towers and run away from the public. It will be an accountability chamber for those who think that for a senator to see them, they must make an appointment 3 days or 4 days, and then they go there and they are kept waiting for 6 hours. We will meet here, Mr. Speaker, and we will ensure that we squeeze out of them the accountability that Kenyans expect, and we shall ensure that we are not going to have a rogue government that will be running this country from ivory towers, will be running this country from the executive, and some of them, Mr. Speaker, as you know, are people we competed against in the last elections. You work very hard to become a member of the Senate. The person you vanquished becomes a cabinet secretary, and then they are the ones who are lording it over you. You work very hard to become the senator for Meru, and then the person you vanquished becomes a CAS, Mr. Speaker. And then when it comes to order of precedence, the CAS is now more powerful than the senator who defeated him in the last elections. These are things we must fix, Mr. Speaker. And I want to encourage Senator Dr. Boni Khalwale. In the past parliament, he came up with an order of precedence bill. We must revive that order of precedence so that those people who are political losers out there, and they are still Kenyans, they can get other opportunities, but they cannot lord it over the people who have been selected by the public to represent them here. Mr. Speaker, my final concern, that this House must and can only admit a cabinet secretary who is appointed as per the Constitution and who has been vetted by the National Assembly as required by the Constitution. Let nobody bend the rules to bring in chief administrative secretaries and all sorts of characters to this House. Mr. Speaker, I am supporting this motion on the assumption that the Senate Business Committee has discussed and there has been unanimity on the matter. On that basis, I support.
Thank you, Senator Kajwang. Senator Sigei Wakiri, Hilali.
Thank you once again, Honorable Speaker. I want to support the majority leader in the context of the amendment of these House standing orders, not standing orders, but calendar, sorry, so that we facilitate the appearances of the cabinet secretaries on Wednesday morning in the sitting so that they answer to questions which honorable members have put forward regarding their respective ministries. I have listened through the comments and contribution by the Honorable Senator Kajwang, and I want to confirm to him that indeed the House Business Committee sat, debated on the issues, the pros and cons, and the reasons which were put forward as to why we need these cabinet secretaries to appear before this House. I am alive to the fact that this House also debated in the course of the motion to amend the standing orders. It was acrimonious, but at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, this House is mandated to make sure that the people who've been given mandate as cabinet secretaries are responsible for what happens in their ministries. That responsibility, Honorable Speaker, can only be achieved when the said cabinet secretaries are called upon by the House to appear and respond substantively to the questions with which the honorable senators have asked. And these questions, Mr. Speaker, I am aware, are questions regarding the performance by those cabinet secretaries in their ministries on the roles which Kenyans expect them to do. Mr. Speaker, I am equally aware that there is an issue that was raised as regards the appearances by the cabinet secretaries in the House being non-members to this House. And I want to convince the members that that conversation, Mr. Speaker, was in the context of a misunderstanding of the persons who will be expected to appear before this House. And the order is, Mr. Speaker, as put clearly by the Honorable Senator Kajwang, that the only people who will appear in this House are the cabinet secretaries who are constitutionally appointed, vetted by the National Assembly, sworn into office, are the only ones who will appear here. We do not expect any other character, any other person other than a cabinet secretary to appear in this particular house. This house, under the constitution, has got its membership established. That appearance cannot be construed as the person coming as a member of this house. It is a member who has been summoned to appear to answer to questions relevant to their delivery of services to the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, as I support this motion, I also want to encourage the members of this house to heed the provisions of those standing orders, so that we ensure that the questions that we put forward are questions that will support the performance of the House in its role in legislation, in oversight, and in ensuring that the people of Kenya are actually served, specifically provided for, the kind of questions, how they are supposed to be put forward, and, Mr. Speaker, the opportunity to grant members additional time for supplementary questions gives us an opportunity beyond the written question that has been sent to ensure that if the said cabinet secretary is not sufficiently responding to the question, the member will have that opportunity to do it. I want to encourage the members to seize the opportunity and make sure that we make the debate in the House, the performance of the cabinet secretaries, to be an opportunity for the people of Kenya to feel that this House indeed is doing the work of a Senate, an upper house, and also ensuring that service to the people are appropriately delivered. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Thank you. Honorable Senators, the evidence which was brought tabled by Honorable Senator Okech Eddie, I will stand the evidence, I will look at it keenly and communicate at an appropriate time whether it satisfies the requirements of our standing orders. Therefore, that matter will not be revisited this afternoon. I'll take time to go through it. I'm now well versed with the issues that he released yesterday. So I'll take time to go through it and bring some report to this House. Let's proceed, Senator Okech Eddie.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to contribute on this motion. The bullfighter, Senior Senator Boni Alwale, started by saying that if something is good and you can make it better, then make it better. But I also want to say that if something is really good, that it can stay good, make it just stay good. Because some of these motions that we seek to introduce in the House, Mr. Speaker, are forgetting the fundamental reasoning behind some of these standing orders. Standing order number 34, on the hours of meeting, Mr. Speaker, if you read standing order number 34, 5, says that a motion under paragraph 4 shall be moved at least 30 minutes before the time appointed of adjournment. Now, if you start from 4, it says, notwithstanding paragraph 1 and 2 of standing order number 34, the Senate may resolve to extend its sitting time. May resolve, meaning that if there is indeed a substantive issue.
So which I give you time to contribute to the debate.
Yes, I'm contributing to the debate.
I thought you're on another matter which is. Can you be relevant?
No, I am not supporting the motion. Okay? the motions forwarded by the majority, that's what we are discussing.
Yes.
Yes.
And give you time to contribute, to talk about Senator Mbone Karwale, others. Just be specific.
Mr. Speaker, maybe I think you are still examining my evidence. You did not get my.
No, I'm not yet there with the evidence. I'll take time.
Because I think you did not get my opening formula. I was saying that this motion attempts to actually change some of the some of the provisions of Standing Order number 34, for which they're already so good that I don't think that this House does need to have meeting hours added to such days as Wednesday. And I was trying to say that if there is actually a very serious issue that needs to be considered with extra hours or an extra sitting, our standing orders already provides for that. And that's why I was saying that the standing order number 34 is actually a very well laid out standing order, to the extent that the fears that the majority brings through this motion are already taken care of by this standing order. To the extent that if there is a motion, and we have seen this, Mr. Speaker, even at instances whereby we have got adjournment motions, and even any other motion where using this standing order, you can actually extend the time of a sitting, or you can actually seek for another, a different sitting. That's why I was saying that this is already so good that there's no need of interfering with it. And the purpose for this, Mr. Speaker, is because the functionality of any House of Parliament is best done in committees. And I think that by design of committees, examination of issues is well catered for. Being able to interrogate matters is well catered for. And some of these committees that we have in this House, Mr. Speaker, are doing a better job in terms of our oversight role and any other role that we do. Today, Mr. Speaker, actually, my sister, Senator Tabitha, who is the vice chair of the Committee on Finance and Budget, spent almost 4 hours when we were dealing with matters of equalization fund, which is a serious fund that under Article 204 of the Constitution has not gone to counties. But at the same time, Senator Tabitha and myself, who are members of that committee, are in CPIC. And in CPIC, Mr. Speaker, today we also are examining very important issues with regards to investment of the water company in Kisii. The governor of Kisii had traveled all the way from Kisii and came to that committee, and we could not get even enough time to be able to serve in both committees. And if we try to attempt to take time out of committees and try to put it on this plenary, Mr. Speaker, I think that we will be losing the point of the functionality of this House. And this is one of those issues, fellow senators, that I want to urge us to not just be following our sides of the houses, that this is a majority issue or minority issue. This is one of the issues that, as my colleague Senator Kajwang had talked about, is a procedural issues. Procedural issues, for the time we have spent in this House, then become experiential issues. When we are making determination about this particular motion, let us make it based on the experiences that we have had, and let us make it on the basis that that experience already speaks to what we see as senators to be a formula that works in terms of effectiveness and efficiency on making sure that we are contributing to our function in this House. And for me, I want to urge you, and I want to urge us that this is something that I don't support, and I hope we don't support, because we don't want to take time out of committees. And in as much as we have got important motions to do here, if you have got a motion that you really care about, as Senator Gloria or any other senator's motion who might be sitting without getting attention, let's explore the standing order number 34, 4, and 30, all the way to 5 and 6, so that you can be able to seek for a sitting that can allow that particular motion to be dealt with. That way, then we make this House more effective. With that, Mr. Speaker, I wish to oppose this motion and encourage my fellow senators to be experiential in making this particular determination to the effect of supporting or not supporting this motion. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Danson Mungatana Buya.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to support the motion by the majority leader. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to state maybe just 2 points that my colleagues have maybe forgotten. But as I stand, Mr. Speaker, I want to associate myself with all those colleagues, honorable members who have spoken before me in support of this motion. Mr. Speaker, a lot of times we forget that cabinet secretaries are state officers. And Mr. Speaker, state officers are covered under Chapter 6 of the Constitution on integrity. Mr. Speaker, the problem with most of us is that when we speak about Chapter 6, we say it is the integrity chapter and we have never read it. But I want to encourage our colleagues here who are in doubt as to the utility of this particular motion, that it is an expression of Chapter 6 at its best on integrity and leadership. Article 73 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, requires that every member who is a state officer, every person who has taken an oath, such as a cabinet secretary, are supposed to exercise the responsibility they have been given as a service to the people and not to rule over the people. Mr. Speaker, when those cabinet secretaries come here, it will be a good reminder to them that they are not supposed to rule over the people, Mr. Speaker. They are supposed to serve the people, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we have had cabinet secretaries who forgot that even the appointing authorities, the deputy president, is senior to them. They have carried themselves, Mr. Speaker, in the immediate past administration in a manner that suggested that they are more superior than not only the ordinary citizens, the ordinary members of parliament, but even senior members of the executive, Mr. Speaker. These are the people, Mr. Speaker, that you cannot handle even in those committees, because in the committees, Mr. Speaker, they write letters, they come when they want, they do what they like, they have ignored summons. And Mr. Speaker, nothing has happened to them. It will not be the same here, Mr. Speaker, when we meet with them face to face in the plenary in the glare of the eyes of Kenyan people. Mr. Speaker, it will remind the cabinet secretaries that they took an oath to serve the people of this country. The cabinet secretaries of the past administrations will be watching and seeing what a cabinet secretary is supposed to do. Mr. Speaker, we will have cabinet secretaries who know the facts of their ministries, not those people who just depend on support staff for them to answer even small questions. We will have people who study the mandate of their ministries, who are able to answer questions, who are able to answer follow-up questions because they have studied their mandate and they are familiar with the outputs and the requirements of their departments, which they have been appointed to head. Mr. Speaker, another reason why we should support this motion is that it is actuating the constitutional requirement under Article 35 that access to information held by the state must be granted to every citizen. And Mr. Speaker, Access to Information Act is there, but this will be the real access to information. Because when those state officers come here, Mr. Speaker, they will not plead that, they are being, this is secret information or what. all the information, all the questions that will be put before them, Mr. Speaker, they will be required to give proper and satisfactory answers. Mr. Speaker, this will be a place where Kenyans will be watching to see the ministers who are the cabinet secretary who deserve to hold those offices. This will be the area where even the appointing authority, His Excellency the President, he will be seeing who is the cabinet secretary who is ready to work as a servant to the people, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this will be the place where all Kenyans, including the appointing authority, including fellow cabinet secretaries, will be watching to see who is sleeping on the job or who is always traveling abroad, never being able to know what is happening in his office, who is always in meetings that are otherwise other than, Mr. Speaker, the authority they have been given to serve. Mr. Speaker, thirdly, we have had cabinet secretaries, Mr. Speaker, who have been extremely busy doing personal businesses, Mr. Speaker, in the past. They have forgotten that the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, specifically forbids, and I want, if I can find that one quickly. Article 77, Mr. Speaker, and I want to read. A full-time state officer shall not participate in any other gainful employment. Mr. Speaker, what we have had in the past is that cabinet secretaries have not spent time mastering the things that have given them that position, mastering the facts about their ministries. Mr. Speaker, cabinet secretaries have been totally dependent on the PSs. You go to their offices and all you hear is, have you asked the PS about this? Have you asked the PS, does the PS know about this? Why? Because they are directors of personal businesses. They are owners and partners of personal businesses. They have a lot of time, Mr. Speaker, spent doing their own things other than the thing that has given them that position. Mr. Speaker, I remember personally serving as an assistant minister in the office of the President. And there used to be a cabinet secretary, Mr. Speaker, who would be, Madam Speaker, who would be saying, there is this and this meeting, I'll be going to State House, so you chair those meetings, and I will come at around 5 to the office. Mr. Speaker, and that particular cabinet secretary, and he was later on fired, he would not be in the State House, Mr. Speaker. He would go to attend to his own meetings, to his own businesses. Of course, he became a very wealthy man at the end of the term. And Mr. Speaker, these are the people we want to just make sure they are not in public service. If people like those were being grilled as it should be, because in those days, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, we used to cover for them. It was us assistant ministers who used to come and take the fire. But in this particular case, we have said cabinet secretaries are the ones who must come in person, Mr. Speaker. And so I want to urge all of us to take this opportunity and to attend, and Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, to be a bipartisan thing. There is no way that we shall support people here, even if we are in Kenya Kwanza and we are in UDA. People who come here and they show incompetence and preparedness, or they are asleep at their job, we shall crucify them in the floor of this Senate. Mr. Speaker, we are not going to joke with people who have been given responsibilities, and some of them, we competed with them and they lost and they went to sit in the cabinet. Mr. Speaker, we shall not give them a time here to relax. They must prepare, they must know the duties, Mr. Speaker, that are involved in those jobs that they have been given. So, Madam Speaker, what is not in order?
Is the Honorable Senator Mungatana in order? Is the Honorable Senator Mungatana in order to make reference to crucifixion of cabinet secretaries who will come and appear before this House? The language used to crucify is not in order.
Senator Danson Munkatana, would you reconsider the use of language and words and their meaning, their ordinary meaning in English parlance?
Yes, Madam Speaker. In the good old school at Alliance High School, we used to have something called similes. And so maybe some of us never benefited. So, Mr. Speaker, I will excuse my senior colleague, my colleague.
Wakili, it appears you did not attend Alliance High
No,
School.
he didn't, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, let me just say, and I want not that we lose this point, Madam Speaker. We want serious people, really serious people to come into this house. Madam Speaker, I have had the fortune of interacting with the head of state, Madam Speaker. This is a very serious man. He knows his facts. When you question him about issues, in fact, even concerning your own county, he would be talking about facts and issues. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I pray that the people who will be coming before us will be prepared, because we are not going to joke around in these sessions. We want serious people, and I hope wherever they are listening, that we want them to be responsible for everything they are doing in the ministry. They will be responsible for the policy direction of the ministries and achieving the goals so that this country can go ahead, Madam Speaker. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I pray that we support this motion. And Madam Speaker, even Eddie, Senator Eddie, and he has gone out. Oh, he's still here. No, don't oppose. You cannot be the only person in Jerusalem who has not heard that everyone is supporting this motion. Madam Speaker, I beg that we support. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have finished speaking, Madam Speaker.
Just finished speaking. Honorable Senators, I have communication from the chair on visiting teachers and students from Gateway Girls High School in Kiambu County. In the public gallery, we have 127 students accompanied by 6 teachers from Gateway Girls High School in Kiambu County who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Speakers, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them on my own behalf and on behalf of the Senate, and wish them a very fruitful visit, and I thank you. Now to welcome the students and the teachers from Gateway Girls High School, I will request Honorable Senator Wamatinga to welcome them.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the senators, and in particular, Senator of Kiambu, Karungo Thangwa, I take this opportunity to welcome the students of Gateway Secondary School to the Senate. Indeed, Senate is a house of all possibilities. I am aware that, and I'm sure that you learn a lot of things here. I would want to encourage you and tell you that you only need to focus on anything that you want to be. If you see some of us, like your Senator Karungo Thangwa and myself, sitting in the Senate, this is a country of possibilities, and I would want to tell you, you must dare dream big so that one day you can not only sit in this house, but maybe even hold the greatest office in this country. As you are aware, we are drawing a lot of motivation from the fact that the current president of this republic was a chicken seller who did believe in himself, and today he's the president. The deputy president of this country was a Mau Mau son, and he dared dream big, and today he's the deputy president. You have all it takes to become what you want. Therefore, I want to encourage you, work tirelessly, and know that this world is yours to conquer. Welcome. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Catherine Muma, can you welcome the students?
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I rise to welcome our students who have come from Nyeri County and, is it? Oh, sorry, Kiambu County, my apologies. And to tell you that this is the place where we make the laws and guide policies in this nation. The role of Parliament, as you may have learned in history or in civics, is a very important role. The role politicians play in your lives is a very important role. So I am glad that your school saw it fit to bring you to come and witness and see what we are doing. And I sincerely hope some of you will grow and take an interest to come to this house to contribute to shaping the policies that will guide this nation. As students, you might have been told that politicians is a preserve of a few people. I want to disabuse you of that notion and to ask that each and every one of you, whether you plan to be in the private sector, whether you want to work in the public service, in the executive, must take a keen interest in politics and what happens in Parliament. Because what happens in Parliament shapes even what happens in your schools, shapes what happens in this country, is the reason why we might take seriously things like the right to health and the right to water. So as students, I am so glad you took an interest. I am so glad you are attentive, and I welcome you to watch even as we debate. I would want you to know that we traditionally debate, sometimes very emotionally, sometimes we look like we are speaking at each other, but we are a united Senate and we are working for this nation. I thank you. Karibuni sana.
Final welcoming remarks from Senator Medho.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to welcome our students, the girls from Gateway Girls High School. Madam Speaker, from the onset, I would want to say that I convey the warm welcome of the Senator of Kiambu, Senator Paul Karungo Dhangwa, who has asked me to welcome the students from Kiambu. Senator Dhangwa is out on official duty of the Senate, and he welcomes the girls. We all hope that they will have an opportunity to learn. My only word of encouragement, Madam Speaker, is that, and I have said this thing many times, Madam Speaker, that education is one very major gate to success and prosperity for all of us. Part of the reason why some of us have had an opportunity of coming and serving in such an august house as the Senate, Madam Speaker, is because we were given an opportunity to go to school, and we put a lot of effort when we were in school. And then we excelled when we were in school, both primary school, high school, and university. Finally, Madam Speaker, I would want to challenge the girls. I see that they come from a very prestigious institution of learning. Some of us never even got an opportunity to attend such prestigious institutions of learning. We have had many senators who come here and they take a lot of pride having attended national schools, but even those of us who attended polling stations, schools that have been used as polling stations for a long time, we also made it and we came this far. So I challenge the girls from Gateway, go make your parents proud, go make your school proud, go make our country proud. We are looking forward to having some of you, and it is such a great encouragement to them that the person who is sitting on the chair of the speaker today is a woman. It's an encouragement that even our girls and women can go all the way up. We have very great women of very great substance. The lady who just spoke just before myself, Senator Catherine Muma, has been serving as the chairperson of the elections board of the ODM party. So women can go all the way up, ladies can go all the way up, and we celebrate them, we love them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Medho. I'll now invite Senator Olekina Ledama to contribute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to oppose this motion for the following reasons. The first thing I want to note is that we are guided by the rule of law and the Constitution. Madam Speaker, I have no problem with the Senate amending its calendar. The biggest problem that I have is once we amend our calendar and we introduce strangers to sit on the floor of the House for us to be able to interrogate them, ask them questions. Madam Speaker, the biggest challenge that I had with us passing the motion of allowing cabinet secretaries or amending our standing orders to allow cabinet secretaries to sit on the floor of the House is because Article 153.3 of the Constitution is quite clear. Article 153.3 of the Constitution states clearly, and I quote, that a cabinet secretary shall attend before a committee of Parliament, either National Assembly or the Senate, to be able to respond to questions that might be asked. If you look at Article 153.4, Madam Speaker, each and every cabinet secretary is required by the law to provide regular updates to Parliament of matters within their docket. So, Madam Speaker, one of my biggest pet peeves is that should I be a legislator that come here to defend the rule of law, or should I be a legislator who comes here and rubber stamp on issues which cannot be able to withstand any form of litigation? Madam Speaker, the biggest challenge that I have, and I was waiting for the Secretariat to be able to demystify what it means by a cabinet secretary sitting here on this side. And yesterday when I was listening to the Speaker giving his communication, the Speaker, in fact, even assigned a seat for the cabinet secretary, where the cabinet secretary is going to be sitting. So it asked me, I went around the entire Narrow County, I spent millions of shillings asking for votes to be able, and I was tasked with the duty to represent the people. I was given the privilege by the people to come and represent them here. Yet somebody who is appointed comes in and sit down when the Senate, when the Speaker is presiding over a house to be able to answer questions. I think it's about time, Madam Speaker, that we define our system of governance in this country. Are we a parliamentary system? Are we a presidential system? And or do we just have our own system, which we call it the Kenyan system? If so, we now go into the Constitution and amend the Constitution, taking into consideration what is required when it comes to amending the basic structure of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, if I sit here and approve and I say I support this motion, I'll be committing an offense. I'll be violating the Constitution. If the chair can tell me that on that specific day, when the cabinet secretary is seated here, the House is converted into a committee, I will have no beef. But as it is, this is a matter, when I sit here, I will be giving fodder for the people who will go to court, and they will say, Senator Lekina also sat there and supported an illegality. Madam Speaker, I think I want to be considered as having been different when it comes to the due process of the law. I want to be remembered in history as a person who stood firm and said no. The day we convert this House into a committee of the whole, by all means, any witness can come. The law is quite clear. Article 125 of the Constitution, our Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act, Section 18 and Section 19, gives us the power to be able to summon or invite witnesses to be able to interrogate them and for them to be able to give us information that we need so that we can perform our task. So, Madam Speaker, without belaboring, I oppose this motion because, one, it goes against the basic structure of our constitution. That is issue number one. Number two, Madam Speaker, I oppose this motion because it violates Article 153 of the Constitution of Kenya. If we're sitting here, Madam Speaker, and the Speaker is not seated there, and we turn the whole House into a committee of the whole, and there is no mess here, I can entertain having a stranger. Madam Speaker, my good friend, I saw him, the senator from Bungoma. The senator from Bungoma, when he was elected through a by-election, and he came to this house, but because he had not taken oath, he was sitting in the Speaker's gallery there as a guest. The only person who is allowed by law to sit on the floor of this house is an elected senator, and of course the Secretariat, who support us here, the Sergeant at Arms, and the Speaker, whom we elect to be able to refer yes. But any other person who sits there during plenary, it will be a violation of the Constitution of Kenya. And I do not want to be the first one or among the people who violate the Constitution of Kenya. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I oppose.
Senator Esther Anyen Okenyuri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this motion. In fact, it's very timely. As a young legislator, I now will be having time to take to account the respective cabinet secretaries on what they have budgeted for young people, women in this country, because they have budget lines that they have to state here. We will also have real-time answers. As it is now, chairs of committees can only report what the cabinet secretaries have written to them. And as we all know, they generally view the Senate as any other ordinary body they'll appear to. So at times they opt to just write very short responses, which you might have limited time to query. But in appearing in this house where every other senator is, then there will be more transparency, then there is time to even question on real time. They'll be going on Hansard, so they won't be just be mere pronouncements to suit the interest of few people. Madam Speaker, this is also a good opportunity, and I want to commend the President who, among the campaign promises he made, was to have cabinet secretaries appear in this house. That is quite progressive in promoting open governance. Young people from various parts of this country, women and any other ordinary citizens will have an opportunity to see if whoever is holding a particular docket is actually capturing their interest. Are they competent people? Just like Senator Mungatana said, you're not going to rely on shorthand notes given by technical persons. You should be having knowledge on your area of interest. So, Madam Speaker, such a motion I support in full, because like me, who took quite some time learning the ropes in this house, having been a late entrant, will have more time to also push my issues that are concerning young people, women, and generally disadvantaged persons in this country. So I support this motion. And I want to give, not a warning, but I want to alert the cabinet secretaries who will be responding here. Most of them have not been picking phone calls. I do not understand, because at times you're not calling them to ask for any favors. But in this house, there will be no chance of giving excuses that you're either out of the country. Once you appear here, we exhaust all our questions. You give your responses, you state what you've captured for the young people, for the women, and for any other special interest groups we have in this country. So I want to support this motion and urge my colleague, Senator Eddie. Eddie, you're a young person like me, and you need to support this because it will give Senator Eddie, you are a young person like I am, and I know the young people from Migori We'll be looking forward to seeing how you take to account the cabinet secretaries.
Just pause there, Senator Essie.
Okay.
What's your point of order, Senator Eddy?
Madam Speaker, is it in order?
And you cite the standing order you're relying on.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, you know, standing order number 121, 122, and 123 applies. Is it in order for Senator Essie to address Senator Eddie Okech in this house and not the chair? Because the standing orders are very clear that if you're going to address the house, they address through the chair. And Madam Speaker, the reason why I'm raising this is very important. When we say we are going to have strangers in the house, and let's say a stranger addresses me the way AC addresses me, or the stranger is out of order, or the stranger that is called a CS abuses me, or the stranger does anything that is out of order. Madam Speaker, which standing order will you use to take a stranger out of this house or to command the sergeant at arms to take action on any stranger? This is why we are saying that this is a very big problem, Madam Speaker, that we are entertaining.
Senator Eddy. Honorable Senator Eddy.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Address Senator Eddy through.
And Senator Eddy, Madam Speaker, should also actually be very welcoming that I can actually recognize him as one of the few young senators we have in this house making meaningful contributions. So Senator Eddy, I want to implore you to support this move, because the good people of Migori County...
Address Senator Eddy through the chair.
Yes, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, I would like to implore Senator Eddy to embrace this move, because the young people of Migori County are going to have an opportunity to also see how their good senator is getting real-time responses on their issues. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Mwaruma Jones Moshoshe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to oppose this motion that calls for changing of standing orders to include Wednesdays, number 1, as part of our calendar. Number 2, inviting cabinet secretaries to come and contribute or be part of this house. Madam Speaker, for starters, I want to recognize the fact that from my experience from the last parliament, it has been extremely difficult to get some of the CSs to come and answer to statements and petitions from members. However, Madam Speaker, because of that difficulty, we tried to amend this constitution through BBI, but it went the way it went. Now, Madam Speaker, what we're trying to do now is to amend the constitution through the back door, through amending the standing orders. Madam Speaker, being the lawyer you are, we are a presidential system and not a parliamentary system or a mongrel. In a presidential system, we are supposed to have parliamentarians, and the executive would serve as CSAs and the president. When we invite, and that has been alluded by the rest of the members who have contributed, Senator Ldama Olekina, Senator Eddie Okech, how would we be admitting cabinet secretaries into this house with the mess there? How would it look like? So I want to go on record that I would be one of the people to support this, because it is unconstitutional. It is an unconstitutional move. Thirdly, Madam Speaker, we have tried before to have sittings in the morning on Wednesdays. We have had quorum hitches until we decided let us have only 3 days in the week for our sittings. Number 3, Madam Speaker, we have only 3 days for committees to meet. In the committees, we process bills, we process petitions, we process statements. We have had problems of quorum in the committees because of the members belonging to 2, 3, 4 committees. And in the permutations and the combinations, we have had difficulties having quorum if the committees are standing or are sitting at the same time. What will happen now, Madam Speaker, if you're having only 2 days instead of the 3 days that instead of having, we only have 2 days instead of the 3 committee days, that is Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday mornings. Madam Speaker, when we have done our committees, we have had good sessions with cabinet secretaries, those who appear, and we have gone into the depth of the issues. Now, Madam Speaker, by reducing the time to 2 days, do you want to bite shallow and wide, or want to continue biting narrow and deep when we have just few members asking questions to cabinet secretaries? So I would oppose this move. I know because of the membership of the other side and the few members from this side that might support the unconstitutionality of this move, but I want to go on record that this issue or this amendment to the standing orders is something that is tantamount to trying to change the constitution through the back door. The president, I know, wants the cabinet secretaries to come here, but then why can't he follow the constitution and change the constitution through the provisions that are there that allow us to change our constitution? Madam Speaker, I oppose, and thank you for the opportunity.
Senator Mutinda Tabitha Maureen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I do rise to support the motion. Summoning the ministers, actually, or inviting them to the House, I look at it in a wider perspective. Yes, as my colleague and member of the Finance Committee mentioned today, Senator Eddy, that we were to have the Minister for National Treasury, and apparently he was not in a position to appear. Most of the issues that are in the committee are issues that we normally address to the CSs in the different offices that they hold. And so bringing the House together and bringing in the ministers, we will be able to cover a wide range of issues that we actually raise in this House. We as the representatives of the people, it becomes actually much more easier to be able to have direct answers, and also for the people to be able to listen to the feedbacks of the people that are serving in these different offices. Yes, earlier, Madam Speaker, it has been indicated that the CSs have actually had a character of not wanting to actually appear. But I'm happy because in our manifesto, this was one of the key issues that we promised that the CSs shall appear. It's not a war that is actually being set. It's actually an opportunity to be able to address much more fundamental issues that are affecting different parts of this country. Looking at where the situation is today as a country, we're having the issues that are happening, like for example, the Maandamano issue that are normally taking place in our country. It is also good whereby we have the CSs like Professor Kindiki to be able to give us the status of the security issues in our country because of what is happening during these proceedings. Madam Speaker, in the Constitution, Article number 77, it actually states that state officers have a mandate to showcase their leadership and integrity in terms of what they are doing in the offices, how they are actually delivering their goals as per what we've promised Kenyans as government. And it is the high time that we have an open mind and look at it broadly. At the same time, yes, there's a concern of the number of days for the committees, because we've been conducting committees Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And you realize the common factor in all these committees is that point where we summon different CSs in these committees. I would urge colleagues to actually look at it in a perspective that we will minimize some of the issues in the same committees. We will be able to, yes, we will limit the Wednesday time, the morning session, but these are issues that we can be able to rearrange, because we say without planning, then we fail. So I find it possible to actually adjust our committee timings, and we squeeze them to Tuesday and Thursday, and we'll be able to address most of the pending issues, because you find in those committees we have statements that need to be tackled, statements that the CSs come in to respond to, and if we put it in this plenary, then we'll be able to actually cover a lot of issues. I remember during the issue of Her Excellency Governor Kawera of Meru, when she appeared to the Senate, the colleagues actually proposed on plenary, but because of the time factor, we settled for a committee. It's now a very good opportunity, and also for us, the new members, to be able to learn much more widely on different matters, because we'll be able to invite different ministers. Some of us serve in committees that are just specific to specific ministries, but now it will be able to cover a bigger, wide coverage. So, Madam Speaker, I do support.
Senator Okoit Andrew Mutata.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to contribute. I rise to oppose the motion on the floor. First and foremost, I would like to correct the senator who has just left, who has just spoken before me. When Senator Kawira arrived, when the Act of Parliament, which cuts and pastes Article 145 into the County Governments Act, allows for people to come here during impeachment. It's the Constitution itself that allows. The same Constitution allows the President to address this House once in a year. So the appearance before a plenary of a governor who is being impeached is allowed by the Constitution itself. What we are saying is that we are a creature of the Constitution. We are not a law unto ourselves. And there is no provision for amending the Constitution through the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza. The manifesto of Kenya Kwanza had promised to people something that was unconstitutional, and it's upon us to ensure that the Constitution prevails. We chose a presidential system. And in a presidential system, we elect two centers of power. We elect the House and we elect the Constitution. People directly elect two centers of power. In a parliamentary system, the people elect one center of power called Parliament, and then Parliament elects the executive, where you have got cabinet ministers and whatever coming from the House, and they are members of the House, and they can appear in the House. We do not have that kind of structure. So it's my submission that we cannot introduce the parliamentary system or a mixture of the parliamentary and the presidential system through the back door. We borrowed the presidential system from the American system. The only other presidential system on earth is in Nigeria. Only 3 countries have pure presidential systems: Kenya, Nigeria, and the United States of America. I'm yet to see where cabinet secretaries appear in the House. So, and I support the proposal that has been made here. If people want the luxury or the pleasure of seeing cabinet secretaries appear before a membership or before the House as a whole, then we remove this mess and we remove the speaker and we have a kamkunji. Let cabinet secretaries appear before the kamkunji of the Senate, but not before the Senate. Secondly, if you look at the conditionalities that have been imposed on that so-called appearance of the cabinet secretaries here, they have deliberately created a shuttle for protecting cabinet secretaries from parliamentary inquiry. At the committees, we do not have limitation on what you can ask a cabinet secretary. And a cabinet secretary who doesn't turn up can face sanctions. I'm yet to be told that any committee has imposed a sanction on a cabinet secretary and there were no consequences to it. Why are we handling cabinet secretaries with kid gloves? Why are we mollycoddling them? So me, I don't of breaching the Constitution for expedient reasons. There's absolutely no reason why we should not follow the Constitution. The power donated to us to make standing orders is highly limited. It cannot give us the power to override the Constitution. A river does not flow higher than its source, and we cannot purport to be flowing higher than the Constitution. And I'm sure the bullfighter understands that saying from where we come from. Secondly, as I conclude, I'm also endorsing the point that the Senator for Taita Taveta has made here, that we have got very limited time for committees. If again we take away time from committees to put into the plenary, we shall not be doing justice to the committees. We have a backlog of work, and even now in the CPAC, we're even sitting on Mondays to be able to cover the backlog. So, as I oppose this particular motion, I pray that we be sober, we look at the Constitution, and if we want cabinet secretaries to appear before this House, let us do the honorable thing. Let us amend the Constitution. We have the power to amend the Constitution. Let us invoke it. Let us amend the Constitution. But before we amend the Constitution, we must apply the law as it is. There is no room for applying the law as we would like it to be. The law as it is the law of the land. The law as we would like it to be is not a law. So, I stand to oppose the motion.
What is your point of order?
Madam Chair, thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I rise on standing order number 122. 122(1)(c), which expects that a member should declare their interest. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, could the Senator of Busia declare whether, after eloquently contributing in this motion, and after the motion will have sailed through, he will still go to court and sue this institution?
Yes, let me answer.
Senator Boni, respectively, we cannot contemplate before it actually happens. Senate is not served with any proceedings as yet. And as a senator, he would be free to debate before any proceedings are done.
In reply, I'll quote Article 3, Clause 1, which says every person has an obligation to respect, uphold, and defend this Constitution. And if you violate this Constitution in this House, I'll go to court and I will challenge it. I have an obligation to uphold, respect, and defend the Constitution, which I do with pride, which I do with honor, which I do with distinction, which I applaud myself for if you don't applaud me. My brother, bullfighter, I've run out of adjectives. So, Madam Speaker, I don't know, how do you say it? I need to be guided, because you say, Mr. Speaker, sir. How do we say, Madam Speaker? How do we crown it? How do we do it? May I be informed? I request to be informed by Senator Khalwale.
Senator Boni.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, indeed I would love to inform the Honorable Senator of Busia, but assuming that he's the lawyer he has claimed to be, the medium of learning, the medium of teaching law is English. This law he's talking about, is it from River Road or the University of Karamojong?
Senator Wamatinga, do you want to respond to that?
He failed to inform me. He asked me, he wanted me to inform him instead. So we leave it at that. But then I wind up, I oppose the motion, and I pray that it fails. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Wamatinga.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I also arise to support. Madam Speaker, in the global governance, transparency, or the perception that the lack of transparency and accountability has made many donors shy away from investing in many countries. Madam Speaker, sir, the spirit of having cabinet secretaries come to the House is informed by the readiness of the presidency to show the world, the outside world, that they are prepared to be not only accountable, to be transparent, and most importantly, to showcase what they want to do for the country. Madam Speaker, I've listened to my fellow colleagues, senators, contribute and quote the Constitution. We did promulgate the Constitution to better the lives of Kenyans. Today, Madam Speaker, if it would be time to change the Constitution, it takes a step to cover a journey of 1,000 miles. It is the beginning, Madam Speaker, of governance that is not only open, but governance that has nothing to hide. Under the presidency of none other than Dr. William Samoei Ruto, he has pronounced himself to the fact that he would be prepared to place his cabinet secretaries at the hands of the parliamentarians so that they can not only be interrogated, Madam Speaker, but they can come and explain the policy direction his government is taking. Madam Speaker, from a pessimistic approach, we may assume that they are coming here to answer questions, but most importantly, Madam Speaker, there could even be no questions to answer because we still have the committees which are sector specific and which will have the time to explore specific sector questions. We may not have the time in the House, Madam Speaker, but explaining the policy direction of the government, Madam Speaker. We as senators, we as leaders who've been elected to come to this House to represent our constituents, we need to get the policy direction of the government so that we can explain it to our constituents. And therefore, there is no better opportunity, Madam Speaker, than to have a cabinet secretary come to the floor of the House and explain what it is that they intend to do on some of the issues that they are trying to implement. Madam Speaker, I think for 60 years we've been learning in the long track and in the long direction. It is in the wisdom of none other than the President that he said we must have an accountable government, a transparent government, a government that is prepared to explain to its people what they are doing. And in his effort to make the cabinet secretaries responsible of their acts, Madam Speaker, the President saw it wise to make them or to request us as Parliament to change the standing order so that we can accommodate them to come in the House to do nothing else than explaining what the government is doing. And this is what we are talking about. Madam Speaker, people are going out there demonstrating because they have claimed that they have no platform to place their petition. Madam Speaker, that platform is being brought into their doorsteps. It's being brought in the House here, where people will come and explain, where members can be able to give their petitions, so that, Madam Speaker, we will never ever have another demonstration in the pretense that we do not have a forum to present our petitions. This, I thought, Madam Speaker, it would be a welcome move, especially by the members of the minority, because they are the ones who are going out there and saying they do not have an opportunity. Madam Speaker, just the other week I sat in this House with one of the organizations that is charged with distributing, generating power for this country. I could not get quorum enough to proceed with the session because some people who are claiming the cost of living is so high prefer to go and throw stones as if stones can bring the cost of living down. Madam Speaker, I'm saying this, that now we are here and saying that we can get the cabinet here. It is a golden opportunity for us, even those who are not sitting in the cabinet, to give those wonderful ideas we have, how we can bring the cost of living down without landing on the streets, without burning police cars, Madam Speaker, without destroying people's property. We have a golden opportunity, like readers, to address those issues. Madam Speaker, I think everybody who's patriotic and nationalistic enough must support this move, because this is the beginning of democracy that is people-driven, democracy that is answerable to people, and leadership that has nothing to hide, leadership that is accountable and transparent. Madam Speaker, I support.
Senator Osotsi Godfrey Atieno.
Madam Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I join colleagues who are opposed to this motion to say I oppose this motion because, Madam Speaker, you remember we all took an oath here and we said that we will uphold and protect the Constitution. Madam Speaker, I think we are treading on a very dangerous ground as a Senate or as a Parliament, because the moment we want to push through amendments to the standing orders, which clearly are unconstitutional, we are setting a very wrong precedent for this Parliament, because this is a house of record, this is a house of rules, and this is a house that should take the lead in protecting constitutionalism in this country. Mr. Speaker, I have listened very carefully to contributions, and I want to say I've had the benefit of being in the other house, and I've seen scenarios where one side of the house pushes through legislation forcefully, but later on that piece of legislation comes to hurt them the most. Madam Speaker, I think this House has to debate and pass laws or standing orders for posterity, not for political expediency. I have heard my young sister, Essie, talk about election pledges. Madam Speaker, we all gave election pledges. But even if we want to implement those election pledges, let it be done in line with our Constitution. We cannot just push through issues because you promise Kenyans that this is what you want to do. They must be done in a lawful and in a manner that aligns to our Constitution. Madam Speaker, I have also listened to members say that by CSS coming to this House, it will make them more effective, more useful. But I tend to disagree with that notion, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if you look at Article 153(4) of the Constitution of Kenya, it's very clear on the issues of decisions, responsibility, and accountability of cabinet secretaries. It states that the cabinet secretary, and I want to emphasize part B of that, shall provide Parliament with full and regular reports concerning matters under their control. And Madam Speaker, we have committees in this house. What are we trying to tell the whole world? We are trying to tell the whole world that our committees are not functional. We need to really insist on cabinet secretaries providing reports to our committees and making our committees work. And what has been processed by committees now is taken here. But when we say that now when cabinet secretary appear before us, then we are going to be more effective, I think we are not being truthful to us, and that clearly shows that we are not working within our committees. Madam Speaker, the second point which I want to bring up is that standing orders is part of parliamentary law, that this is our law in this house. And being parliamentary law that we use to process other laws, I think it's important for this law to go through public participation. Article 118 is very clear and says that Parliament shall, the part B of it, facilitate public participation and involvement in the legislative and other businesses of Parliament and its committees. We cannot be passing standing orders here without going to the public. Maybe if we took these standing orders to the public, they will have their input. They will tell us this is unconstitutional. They will even give us some useful input. But now, Madam Speaker, you subject these standing orders to the committee, and then the committee writes a report, and that's all. And you bring it here. And this same house is the house that is going to pass other legislations, which are supposed to go through public participation. Mr. Speaker, is this, Madam Speaker, is this not contravening Article 118 of the Constitution? So I think this thing must be looked at very clearly with a sober mind and without political persuasion. Because what is happening now, Madam Speaker, those who are supporting, I am very sure that they are not supporting it because that is what the conscience tells them to do. It is because of the political situation of the moment. But now Senate cannot dissent that law. We want to pass laws that are going to be respected in a long time to come. Because in future, as I said, these laws will come to haunt you. I have gone through that. That other house where I was, I remember they passed through vigorously with force security laws. The same people who passed it, they came later to cry about it. I am very certain this will happen to this house again, Madam Speaker. So let us be very objective, because in future we are going to remind ourselves to what we did by forcefully passing through these amendments. Madam Speaker, I have read the Constitution, and nowhere in the Constitution does it say cabinet secretaries shall appear before the plenary. The only place where you get appearance of the cabinet secretary is in Article 153(3) that says a cabinet secretary shall attend before a committee of the National Assembly or the Senate when required by the committee and answer any questions concerning a matter for which the cabinet secretary is responsible. Madam Speaker, even if we wanted cabinet secretary to appear, then we'll go the Umtata way. Let us have a committee of the whole house so that it is cabinet secretary appearing before the committee, but a committee of the whole house. Then we can ask questions in that committee of the whole house, and I think that will not be breaking the Constitution. But by amending the standing orders in the manner we have done, Madam Speaker, it offends Article 153 of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, additionally, as some members have said, we need to ask ourselves, what system of government are we looking for? Are we looking for a parliamentary system of government? And if we are looking for a parliamentary system of government, then let's not do things in a piecemeal. Let's even have a prime minister who will be appearing here for prime minister's hour to answer questions from us. I know we have a position closer to a prime minister. Why do we want to pass these amendments before we put that position in law? I'm talking about the Prime Cabinet Secretary, who happens to be my constituent. It is very clear in the coalition agreement that his position was supposed to be entrenched in law 30 days on assumption of power. That has not been done. So let us have a parliamentary system of government if you want to have it. Let us have a presidential system if you want to have it. Let's not have something strange in between that is not clear. And Madam Speaker, this agitation for wanting to change things to look different is going to hurt this country. We have had cases where laws have been changed, operations in government have changed. Even the other day we heard that you don't have to go through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on a diplomatic issue. You can go direct to a line ministry. Madam Speaker, that violates the Vienna Convention. We want to do things different in this country, and it's going to hurt us, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, to end, as Honorable Kajwang has said, that Wednesdays are days when some of our committees, especially the committee of CPAC and CPIC, we engage counties. And we have a backlog of work. Madam Speaker, I'm worried that if we take away Wednesday, we will not be able to clear the backlog we have. So in that case, we will permanently request for a leave so that we can handle the numerous reports we have in CPAC and CPIC. Madam Speaker, I want to urge members, please let us be objective on this matter. Let us be wise, because we may do things in a hurry. We may want to impress our political bosses, but in the future, I can guarantee you, this will come to haunt us. And Madam Speaker, this is a matter that if one went to court, he will easily get orders against this. Do we want to be a parliament that is going to be injected by the courts on its own standing orders? That is one question we need to ask ourselves. So, Madam Speaker, I am opposed to these amendments to the standing orders, and I'm totally opposed, and I'm going to vote against the standing orders. I can see my friend Aaron is smiling, but I want to tell you, Majority Leader, that there is need to have Cabinet Secretary appearing before the House, yes, but let us do it in the right manner. If we want to amend the Constitution, even this side of the House is ready. We support the idea of Cabinet Secretaries coming to answer questions. But let us follow the right procedure. Let us do it constitutionally. Madam Speaker, I end by saying I oppose this amendment.
Senator Nyamukaren Jerry.
Madam Speaker, I wonder how any member of this Senate would have an issue with Cabinet Secretaries coming to answer the people's concerns at the floor of this House. And I've also had other members saying that if we adopt this arrangement, it would be unique from other countries that either subscribe to a parliamentary or a presidential system, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I wonder what is wrong with us having our unique ways, or in us getting innovative to to deal with our own unique challenges. Mr. Speaker, there are many many statements have been brought in this House addressed to committees. I happen to sit in the Security Committee, where I am Vice Chair, and this committee happens to have the highest number of statements at 33 statements, Mr. Speaker. And getting these answers to the floor happens to take ages. Mr. Speaker, also the issue of communication, there is also the aspect of distortion in communication. It is best that the cabinet secretaries come here and answer these concerns themselves so that we don't have any distortion of information. Allow me, Madam Speaker, to applaud our majority leader for bringing this very timely motion, because we have very wonderful motions and bills tabled in the floor of this House that will benefit from this motion. Personally, I have brought before this motion a proposal to increase the minimum wage from 15,000 to 22,000, Madam Speaker. And if we get to pass this motion, such motions are going to get passed in good time so that we can serve the country, Madam Speaker. And with that, I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Nyamu. Senator Edwin Sifuna wa Kenya.
Madam Speaker, I rise to join my colleagues on the minority side who have opposed this particular motion. And I stand here in the full understanding of the futility of our effort, but still we will do what we think is right in accordance with the Constitution. Madam Speaker, as Senator for Busia has said, all of us have taken an oath to defend the Constitution, and that is exactly what we do. I have just come from Kiambu Police Station, Madam Speaker, where I had been arrested, purportedly on charges of unlawful assembly at my own offices at KICC, Madam Speaker. And it absolutely breaks my heart, some of the comments that have come from the chair of the Energy Committee, knowing that I'm a very strong member of that committee. We are working together to make sure that we reduce the cost of living for Kenyans. But even as we do that, Madam Speaker, I believe it is important for those of us who believe that the constitutional rights that we gained through blood and sweat are protected. I hold the position, in fact, Madam Speaker, that every single appendage that God gave you, if you do not use it, it will fall off. Madam Speaker, this is how we as human beings lost our tails. We used to have tails. And because we were not using those tails, we no longer have tails. In my view, constitutional rights are the same. Constitutional rights are the same. I'm a student of evolution, Dr. Khalwale. So even these rights, the exercise of these rights is what gives them life. In my view, Madam Speaker, we have given our position as a minority on these amendments. And I want to confirm here that, in fact, we as the leadership of the minority will be proceeding to court to challenge these particular amendments, and we know that that is a forum to ventilate some of the issues that have been raised by my colleagues. But allow me to just disabuse the notion of some of my colleagues that, in fact, this is something other than what it is. Because, Madam Speaker, in our view, this is not an opportunity for us to actually put members of the cabinet to task. It is a cosmetic change we could have done way better by just going the long constitutional route to actually give the Senate powers over these cabinet secretaries. And I'm going to demonstrate how. Madam Speaker, my colleagues who think, and I like what Senator Esio Kenyuri was saying, but I hope that she listens to us also, that, Madam Speaker, in fact, if you look at the rules that were passed by the majority side, because the record of the Senate indicates, although yes, it is now a decision of the Senate, the minority, in fact, did not participate in that decision, and that's why we are taking the matter up. That, in fact, the rules that we have bound ourselves to in this particular process allow, first of all, for very serious censorship from the Speaker, that, in fact, the questions that you want to put to a cabinet secretary can be denied by the Speaker. Those are the rules that we passed here. Number two, Madam Speaker, if we have complained about the speed of the responses that come from the committees, and yet we go again and bind ourselves in a period of time under those rules that were passed here, that the responses of the cabinet secretaries can only come after 7 days, then we are defeating the point. Madam Speaker, also, as politicians, we know that the news cycle is incessant. The news cycle doesn't stop. Stories develop every day. Kenya is always on the move, Madam Speaker. By the time you are asking a cabinet secretary a question from 7 days ago, that matter has long moved on to something else. And if really the intention of this House was to try and have quick responses on matters that are relevant and current, then really this particular rules that you have passed have tied the hands of the Senate in terms of the speed with which you can get answers for your residents. And I can see my good Senator Lelegwe is here. If there are issues in your county, security issues, there has been an attack on a school, even if you get the CS here, by the time he comes here, Madam Speaker, that issue will have moved on and you will have fresh questions, which you can't ask him because you know you have already submitted these questions 7 days earlier. Madam Speaker, we also have this position that in fact, the rules, the way they have been framed, they actually have been framed to stifle debate further. For instance, they say that you cannot ask a cabinet secretary about something that you heard in the media. Madam Speaker, I'll give you a classic example, and I wish the senator for Wasingishu, the chair of Health Committee, was here. Just a few weeks back, I read in a newspaper that there was this policy. It was actually a secret policy in the Ministry of Health that was going to restrict labor migration in health services to other countries. The media are partners in the democratic process, Madam Speaker. Many, many things have been unearthed. We as individual citizens do not have the sort of investigative tools or the tools that are available to the media to always know what is going on in the country. Madam Speaker, if you have read today's papers, there are a lot of revelations about some of the things that are going on in the country. If I had not read that report in the newspaper about that health policy, I would not have used the platform of this House to now get clarification from the Ministry of Health. And indeed, I attended sessions of the Health Committee where the stakeholders came. The Ministry of Labor confirmed that they are not aware of such a policy. It is a policy in the Ministry of Health. The stakeholders confirmed to us that yes, it is a secret policy in the Ministry of Health. They had actually been given some circular, and that they in fact had not participated in formulation of that policy. So you cannot ban or outlaw asking questions by members from things that they have seen from media, and yet these media are very critical partners in democratization. I want my colleagues to know that you cannot ask a cabinet secretary a quotation from his own speech. You can't ask a cabinet secretary a question about a quotation from his own speech. And in the context of what is happening in the country right now, Madam Speaker, if, for instance, we had the CS of Interior before us next week, and I have seen a quotation, for instance, him saying that he needs to bring amendments to the House to, review the Public Order Act. As a senator, I have already gagged myself by the rules that I passed myself. Madam Speaker, I believe that our colleagues need to understand and appreciate that, in fact, this thing is not what is being meant out to look like. Another point, Madam Speaker, the restrictions to the nature of the questions. The restrictions to the nature of the questions. This is why I'm telling my colleagues, you will not be able to achieve what you think you are achieving with these rules. There are 11 restrictions to the questions you can ask the cabinet secretary. And the most interesting ones, Madam Speaker, first of all, your question cannot convey a point of view. I can't give say, Bwana CS, from the way I see things, the deployment of KDF together with the police creates command problems because of the relationships of the two entities. I can't do that. Madam Speaker, I like to speak with linguistic tools. You have gagged me, you have said I cannot use irony. I cannot use imputation, inference, opinion. How am I going to debate? You know, maybe other people have capacity to speak devoid of these linguistic devices. But I actually depend on them. This is how I became a lawyer. This is how I became a member of parliament. Madam Speaker, I cannot seek an expression of opinion from the CS. I cannot ask the CS for defense or for interior. In your view, Bwana CS, have the measures you've put in place to protect the people of Baringo been successful? I can't. Because this is how we have tied our hands, in such a way that, in fact, this is something totally useless to us as a house, and I think that we have unnecessarily tied our own hands. Lastly, Madam Speaker, there was something that the Senator for Busia alluded to. Under Article 125 of the Constitution, the committees have been given power to enforce attendance of witnesses. That in fact, if a cabinet secretary fails to honor the invitation of a committee, you have the power to summon him. You have the power to tell him to bring documents, to compel production of documents, and examine him under oath. I have not seen a provision here that will allow us to examine the cabinet secretary under oath. If he comes and he refuses to take oath, and I have seen in our committee at PAC, there are governors who came and insisted to be shown what is the provision that requires me to take an oath. Luckily for us, we have the Constitution to hide under. Article 125, we tell you, you have to take oaths so that the things that you're telling us are truthful. And the reason why people take oaths is so that there are consequences to the things they say, Madam Speaker. So if we have not provided that these cabinet secretaries can take oath, if we can't summon them, if we can't summon documents from them, if we can't compel their attendance, you have provided in these standing orders that all we can do is to start motions of censure. Madam Speaker, why would we as a house take away powers, constitutional powers that have already been granted to committees of the house, and yet the entire house is not avail those same tools? So, Madam Speaker, for me, and having said that we needed to respect the structures in our constitution, their separation of powers, other institutions are defending their turf. We are the only institution of the three arms of government that are giving away their role in the democratic space in this country. I saw it the other day, the courts very strongly pushed back against an attempt by some people to bring in the courts in terms of enforcement of Article 37 rights, and they said everybody has their role. Why are we as a parliament, why are we as a Senate, Madam Speaker, ceding ground? And you know, every single ground you cede is going to be taken up by another arm or body. Luckily for us, because we still have an opportunity to ventilate these matters before the courts, we are hoping that we will be able to succeed before any of these people steps here and soils this hallowed house. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Lastly, we'll have Senator David Wakoli Wafula.
Yes. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Nimesikiza maoni kutoka pande zote na naona muda unasonga. Watu kwetu kule nyumbani husema, na nitaomba nizungumze kwa lugha asilia kisha nitafsiri. Fisi aliambia jiwe, japo utanyamaza umesikia. Wakasi la waulile. Ndugu zangu Mheshimiwa Sifuna na wenzake,
what is your point of order, Senator Sifuna?
Madam Speaker, the standing orders provide that you must complete your submissions in the language in which we began. I think my brother is out of order. Because I think under the standing order, you are only allowed to read a quotation. You cannot go into this. No, he has to tell us where he's reading from. Senator Can he continue? Because he had already said what he wanted to say in Kiswahili. Though he needs to continue in that language, Madam Speaker.
Senator Sifuna.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Nadhani nchi nzima inasikiza mjadala jinsi unavyoendelea, na pande zote zina haki na hoja ambazo Wakenya wanasikiza kwa makini sana. Ninaelewa fika yale ambayo yanawashinikiza ndugu zetu walio wachache kwenye bunge. Ni sawa, sheria inawapa uwezo wa kusema yale mnasema, lakini cha muhimu kule tunakotoka, watu wanataka kuona mawaziri wakiwajibika. Mheshimiwa Sifuna, umetaja vipengele ambavyo kwako ama kwa wale walio wachache
sheria hizi zinaogandamiza ama kuwafinya maseneta wasijieleze fika mbele ya umma. Ni sawa na tuna nafasi ya kubadilisha. Kile tunasema kama serikali ni kwamba mawaziri ambao wamechaguliwa na Mheshimiwa Rais wanapofanya kazi yao hapa Kenya, lazima wawajibike, lazima wajieleze, lazima wadhihirishe kwamba Kenya hii ni yetu sisi sote. Kwa mfano, Mheshimiwa Spika, juzi tumeona baraza la mawaziri na lilikuwa kwa vyombo vya habari kwamba kutakuwa na kubinafsisha mashirika ya serikali, mahoteli na nyenzo tofauti za serikali. Ni sawa. Lakini hapo kuna mawaziri ambao tunawangoja hapa. Kama ni waziri wa ukulima, kama ni waziri wa biashara, aje atueleze aliuliza nani ruhusa ya kubinafsisha mali ya serikali. Kwa sababu sisi ndio viongozi ambao tunawakilisha wa Kenya. Kwa mfano, mimi kama seneta wa Bungoma, hatutakubali kubinafsisha kiwanda cha Nzoia pasipo kuhusisha wapiga kura wa kaunti ya Bungoma. Na hivi kwamba wale ambao wanatoka pembe mbalimbali za hapa Kenya, vile vile lazima waziri waje hapa, tuwaweke kwa msasa na watundike juu msalabani, jinsi Mheshimiwa Mgatana alisema. Kwa sababu Wakenya wana haki ya kupata majibu kutoka kwa mawaziri. Kwa mfano, kuna maeneo ya mipaka hapa Kenya, kule Malaba na kule Busia, kumekuwa na shida ya barabara. Hawa mawaziri kazi yao si kupiga picha jinsi nilisema jana. Waje watueleze bajeti tumewapa, wanatupa sisi wa Kenya haki yetu, ama wao ni kujinafsisha na kufurahia matunda ya serikali. Sasa mimi naunga mkono wangu kiongozi walio wengi kwamba mawaziri waje. Lakini vile ndugu yangu amesema Mheshimiwa Sifuna, tufunguliwe milango, tuzungumze, wa Kenya wasikie. Kama ni lugha tuseme, kama ni mifano tutoe, kwa sababu wanaporudi kwa baraza la mawaziri waambie Mheshimiwa Rais tumewauliza maswali, wameshindwa kujibu, waende wafanye masomo ya ziada nyumbani, tukiwaita tena Mheshimiwa Khalwale watupe majibu tunayotaka. Watu wa Mombasa tunasikia bandari liko kwa shida. Lazima waziri aje atueleze ni mikataba gani, ni nani wanahusika, na kama tuna haki ama tuna hoja za kudhibitisha kwamba kuna watu wanataka kupora nchi ya Kenya, tuanase. Na sisi ndio wengi katika jumba la Senate, Mheshimiwa Spika. Sioni nini kitatutisha, lakini lazima tufuate sheria. Mawaziri waje watueleze, Wakenya kule nyumbani wasikize kwamba tuliuliza kile walitutuma na majibu tumepata. Mwisho kabisa. Okay, asante Mheshimiwa Spika, nashukuru kwa fursa hii. Naomba tuendelee na yale tunayopaswa kuendelea. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Unaunga mkono ama unapinga?
Unaunga mkono na kila kitu Mheshimiwa Spika.
I now call upon the mover to reply. I hope you'll be short. I have communication from the chair.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I took time to listen to our colleagues who have taken time to contribute to this very important motion. Colleagues from majority side, the minority side, those in support, those who are opposing. Mr. Speaker, the reason why I keenly listened to each of them is that I wanted to understand if, for whatever reason, there is anything that we have missed in the form and manner in which we have proposed this motion, such that our colleagues from the minority side will be opposed to it. Indeed, when we began this motion, many of our colleagues on the minority side were actually in support. But I don't know what happened along the way, as is becoming the custom nowadays. Our colleagues are in a bad mood. They imagine that there is something, there's an animal called a server, which until they see, nothing should work in this country. But some of us see the world differently, Madam Speaker. We believe that once upon the election is over, it's our duty now to serve the people of Kenya. Part of the constitutional mandate that I have is to ensure that I hold ministers to account. And the Constitution has provided. Madam Speaker, I have listened to our colleagues. Each of them dance around. And I was hoping that any of them will cite any constitutional provision that bars ministers from appearing from Senate as a House, Madam Speaker. There's none that I could quote. In fact, to the contrary, Madam Speaker, I was hoping when they finish
reading Article 153, which they have quoted so many times out of context. Because they cite Article 153.3, which speaks about members, or which speak about cabinet ministers appearing before committees, but forget to read on. This is a common practice that I see with our colleagues. And the other day I challenged them and I told them, stop reading the Constitution the way drunkards sometimes read the Bible, where they only refer to 1 Timothy 5:23, see that it has permitted them to take wine, they close the Bible and run away. There are other dictates of a constitution. If you read down Article 153.4, Madam Speaker, they will have understood what you are trying to do. 153.4, Madam Speaker, speaks that cabinet secretary shall, A, act in accordance with the constitution, and B, which is extremely important to this matter that is before us, so that for the comfort of my colleagues who may be thinking that maybe what you are doing is not constitutional, is that they will provide Parliament with full and regular reports concerning matters under their control. What the Constitution doesn't do is provide for the how. We don't expect our Constitution to guide us on every little detail. It is us to create the law. And that is what we are doing, Madam Speaker. We are creating the enabling environment for cabinet ministers to appear before us. In fact, I want to tell you that there is nothing other than sulk, which is what our colleagues are doing. You will see them next week on Wednesday. When we resume, there will be more than us in this house, willing and ready to ask. If indeed they strongly believe that cabinet ministers should not come to this house, I challenge the minority side, then don't show up when cabinet ministers are here.
Yes. Hypocrites.
So, Madam Speaker, we must grow a good culture of democracy, where if my colleague who, for political reasons I don't agree with, choose, Madam Speaker, a particular path, if it makes sense, if it's good for the country, then I should be able to support them. Otherwise, what they are setting is a very dangerous precedent. The colleagues who keep on walking out every time they don't agree have bills on the order paper. They have motions. Very soon, Senator Boni Halwale, the whip on the minority side, will start applying the same games to them so that we see how they will transact. They will bring legislation which require 24 delegations. Let's see where they'll get the numbers from if they want us to play this kind of game, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I want to appreciate the colleagues that have brought contributions to this motion. I appreciate, and I have said, and I want to repeat for emphasis sake, Madam Speaker, that cabinet ministers will appear before us in plenary to answer to specific questions that are of national importance, policy-related matters, and still appear before committees to respond to specific matters that are under the jurisdiction of that particular committee. That is plain and simple matter. With those very many remarks, Madam Speaker, I beg to move. Thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Pursuant to Standing Order 84.1, I hereby make a determination that the matter does not affect counties and put the question, Honorable Senators, that notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate on the approval of the Senate calendar made on 16th February 2023, and noting the resolution of the Senate made on Thursday 23rd March 2023, on the 5th report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on the amendments to the standing orders of the Senate, and pursuant to Standing Order 32.4, the Senate resolves to amend its calendar regular sessions of the Senate for the second session 2023 to provide for morning sittings on Wednesdays pursuant to Standing Order 34. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable Senators, I have communication from the Chair. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon a delegation from the County Assembly of Bomet, comprising of members of the County Assembly, and the delegation is undertaking a study tour in the Senate. I request each member of the delegation to stand when called upon so that you may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. So I'll read out the names. Honorable Paul Kirui, Majority Leader and MCA, Danaibosi Ward. Honorable Philip Koril, MCA Kipkeres Ward. Honorable Wesley Kiprotich, MCA Chabas Ward. Honorable Leonard Rotich, MCA Chesion Ward. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. I would wish to request the Honorable Senator from Bomet County to welcome this delegation.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I would like to join you in welcoming the delegation of the honorable members of the County Assembly of Bomet, led by the Majority Leader, to this House. Madam Speaker, the team led by the Honorable Majority Leader, commonly known as Back in the Village, Clear Boyot, Madam Speaker, is a committee under County Assembly Service Board. This is a committee that is also dealing with planning and strategy as a subcommittee, and the responsibility that that committee is dealing with is very important and almost in terms of performance of the House. Madam Speaker, I want to encourage them, as I welcome that the tradition of this House and the tradition of the County Assembly where they come from gives them the responsibility, which I believe they have experienced in their tour today in the Senate and I'm aware in the National Assembly, the ability to ensure that they pivot their role as members of the committee to ensure that the Assembly is efficient and responsible in its functioning to serve the people of Bomet. Part of the role of the Assembly is similar to the role of this House in terms of their oversight role. That oversight role, Madam Speaker, is to ensure that service to the people of the Assembly is equally the service to the people of the County of Bomet. I want to encourage them to go back having attained not one but several opportunities that they will experience. Madam Speaker, the team, if you will allow me, I'm aware the time is running, comprise very experienced members of the Assembly. The Honorable Philip Korir is a three-timer in the Assembly from Kipreres Ward. The Honorable Kiprotich is the former Deputy Speaker of the Assembly and also second-timer in the House. The Honorable Deputy Speaker, Madam Speaker, is my former teacher in my school. And I'm happy to see them also taking the lead in the County Assembly of Bomet, and I encourage them to go back a better team. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Senator. Honorable Senators, it is now 6:30 p.m., time to adjourn the House. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Thursday, 30th March 2023 at 2:30.